You know those nights when you're scrolling endlessly through your phone, looking for something to help you drift off to sleep? Well, tonight we're diving into the chaotic world of Quahog with some absolutely wild Family Guy facts that'll either fascinate you into dreamland or keep you up all night thinking about how bizarre this show really is. Trust me, some of these will blow your mind. Let's start with something that sounds almost too crazy to be true. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice by Fox? Yeah, you heard that right. The show got the axe in 2002 after just 3 seasons. But here's where it gets interesting. The fans weren't having it. They launched massive campaigns, flooded Fox with letters, and basically refused to let their beloved dysfunctional Griffin family disappear forever. Adult Swim started airing reruns, and the DVD sales went through the roof. Fox executives looked at those numbers and thought, maybe we made a mistake. So they brought it back in 2005, only to cancel it again in 2012. But once again, fan outcry was so intense that the network reversed their decision within weeks. Talk about people power. But that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the show's wild behind-the-scenes stories. The character of Peter Griffin was originally supposed to be much different. Creator Seth MacFarlane based Peter's voice on a security guard he knew, but he also drew inspiration from the classic cartoon character Popeye. If you listen carefully, you can hear those gruff, mumbly speech patterns that make Peter so distinctively annoying and lovable at the same time. Speaking of voices, here's something that might keep you up thinking about it. Seth MacFarlane voices not just Peter, but also Brian, Stewie, Glenn Quagmire, and Tom Tucker. The man is basically having conversations with himself for half the show. Imagine the recording sessions where he's literally arguing with himself in different voices. It's like the ultimate one-man show, except it's happening in a professional recording studio with millions of people watching. Now let's talk about some of the more bizarre facts that really showcase how unpredictable this show can be. Remember Ernie the Giant Chicken? That massive yellow bird who gets into those epic, destructive fights with Peter? Well, those fight scenes weren't just random comedy bits. They were actually Seth MacFarlane's way of paying homage to classic action movies and anime fight sequences. Each battle is choreographed like a legitimate action scene, complete with dramatic music, slow-motion moments, and enough property damage to bankrupt a small city. The first chicken fight lasted over 3 minutes, which in animation terms is basically a feature film. Here's something that'll make you think differently about the show's timeline. Family Guy exists in this weird temporal bubble where nobody really ages, but the show constantly references current events. The Griffin kids have been teenagers and babies for over 20 years, yet the show has covered everything from early 2000s pop culture to current social media trends. It's like they're stuck in some kind of cartoon time warp where only the references to the outside world change. The show's approach to controversial topics is another fascinating aspect. Seth MacFarlane has always used Family Guy as a platform to push boundaries and challenge social norms, but he's also incredibly strategic about it. Many of the most shocking moments are actually carefully crafted to spark discussion rather than just offend for the sake of it. The writers spend considerable time debating which lines to cross and which ones to respect, even though the end result might seem completely chaotic. Let's dive into some character-specific facts that reveal just how much thought goes into this seemingly random show. Stewie's British accent has never been officially explained within the show's universe. Seth MacFarlane gave him that posh, sophisticated voice partly as a joke about how American audiences often perceive British accents as more intelligent, but also because it creates this hilarious contrast with his baby appearance and diabolical personality. The accent has become so iconic that fans can instantly recognize Stewie just from hearing a single word. Brian the dog represents something unique in animation history. He's essentially the show's conscience, the character who often voices the writer's more serious opinions about politics and social issues. But here's the kicker. He's also deeply flawed and hypocritical, which makes him more realistic than many human characters on television. His struggles with alcoholism, his pretentious intellectualism, and his unrequited love for Lois create this complex personality that shouldn't work in a cartoon dog, but somehow does perfectly. The show's relationship with censorship is absolutely wild. While Family Guy gets away with an incredible amount of controversial content, there are still things that get cut or altered. The writers have developed this elaborate game with network censors, sometimes including deliberately outrageous content that they expect to be removed, just so they can keep the stuff they really want. It's like a negotiation tactic disguised as comedy writing. Here's something that might surprise you about the show's production process. Each episode takes approximately 10 months to complete from initial concept to final broadcast. That means the writers are constantly juggling multiple episodes at different stages of production. They might be recording voices for one episode while editing animation for another and brainstorming ideas for a third. It's this incredibly complex timeline that allows them to stay current with pop culture references while maintaining consistent character development. The merchandising aspect of Family Guy reveals some interesting insights into fan behavior. Stewie, Griffin merchandise consistently outsells products featuring any other character, including Peter. There's something about that evil baby that resonates with audiences in ways that even surprise the show's creators. Maybe it's his quotability, his distinctive design, or just the absurdity of a homicidal infant, but fans can't get enough of Stewie-themed products. Let's talk about some of the more obscure references that hardcore fans love to discover. The show is packed with callbacks to obscure 1,980 seconds movies, forgotten television commercials, and incredibly specific cultural moments that most viewers won't catch on first viewing. The writers take pride in creating these layers of humor that reward careful attention and repeat watching. Some jokes are designed to be funny on the surface level, while others require extensive pop culture knowledge to fully appreciate. The show's approach to holiday episodes is particularly interesting. Instead of creating heartwarming, family-friendly specials, Family Guy consistently subverts holiday traditions and expectations. Their Christmas episodes often feature apocalyptic scenarios, their Halloween content pushes horror boundaries, and even their Thanksgiving episodes manage to be simultaneously touching and deeply disturbing. It's like they've made it their mission to corrupt every major holiday. Voice acting for Family Guy involves some surprisingly physical performances. Seth MacFarlane often moves around dramatically while recording, especially for Peter's voice, because the character's speech patterns require specific breathing techniques and physical positioning. The other voice actors have picked up similar habits, leading to recording sessions that look more like interpretive dance than traditional voice work. The show's international versions reveal fascinating cultural differences. In some countries, certain episodes are completely banned, while others require extensive editing or dubbing changes that alter entire joke structures. The German version, for example, has to navigate completely different censorship standards, leading to creative workarounds that sometimes make the international versions funnier than the originals. Here's something that connects to the show's longevity. Family Guy has survived multiple major changes in television viewing habits. It started during the era of appointment television, adapted to the DVR age, thrived during the streaming revolution, and now exists in the world of on-demand binge-watching culture. Each transition has required subtle adjustments to pacing, storytelling, and even joke structures to match how audiences consume content. The show's relationship with its own continuity is deliberately chaotic. While some animated series maintain strict continuity, Family Guy treats its own history as more of a suggestion than a rule. Characters die and come back. Major events get forgotten or contradicted, and timeline inconsistencies are often acknowledged with jokes rather than explanations. This approach gives the writers incredible freedom, but also creates this surreal viewing experience where anything could happen at any time. Celebrity guest appearances on Family Guy often involve more work than you might expect. Many famous people who lend their voices to the show also help develop their characters' personality and dialogue. Some celebrities have even pitched entire storylines or specific jokes that ended up in episodes. It's become this collaborative process where guest stars are genuinely involved in the creative process, rather than just showing up to read predetermined lines. The show's animation style has evolved significantly over the years, but the changes are so gradual that most viewers don't notice them. Early episodes have a rougher, more hand-drawn quality, while recent episodes feature incredibly smooth computer-assisted animation. The character designs have also subtly shifted, with faces becoming more expressive and movements becoming more fluid. It's like watching the entire animation industry evolve through one show's progression. Family Guy's approach to social media and internet culture is particularly fascinating. The show has managed to stay relevant across multiple digital revolutions by constantly adapting its humor to current online trends. But instead of just making surface-level references to viral videos or memes, the writers dig deeper into how internet culture affects human behavior and social interactions. They're essentially providing commentary on how we've all changed as people due to digital connectivity. The show's musical numbers deserve special recognition for their complexity and production value. These aren't just throwaway jokes. They're fully orchestrated, professionally performed pieces that often parody specific musical genres or famous songs. Seth MacFarlane's background in musical theater influences these sequences, resulting in surprisingly sophisticated compositions that could stand alone as legitimate musical entertainment. Here's something that really shows the show's attention to detail. The background characters in Quahog have their own consistent personalities and storylines that play out across multiple episodes. If you pay attention, you'll notice recurring extras who have their own character arcs happening in the background, while the main characters deal with their primary storylines. It creates this sense of a living, breathing community rather than just a backdrop for the Griffin family's adventures. The show's handling of controversial real-world events demonstrates a careful balance between comedy and sensitivity. While Family Guy is known for pushing boundaries, the writers actually spend considerable time discussing how to address serious topics without completely undermining their impact. Sometimes they decide certain events are too sensitive to joke about immediately, waiting months or even years before finding the right comedic angle. And here's something that brings us full circle to why Family Guy works so well as bedtime entertainment. Despite all its chaos and controversy, there's something oddly comforting about the show's consistency. No matter how crazy the world gets, you can count on the Griffin family to be dealing with their own ridiculous problems in their own ridiculous ways. It's like a reliable friend who always has a completely absurd story to distract you from whatever's keeping you awake. So there you have it. 20 years of Family Guy condensed into the kind of random facts that either help you drift off to sleep or give you something interesting to think about as you lie there in the dark. Sweet dreams. And remember, if you can't sleep, at least you're not dealing with a giant chicken trying to destroy your entire neighborhood over an expired coupon. Ever wondered what happens when you dive deep into the chaotic world of Quahog at 3 in the morning? Tonight we're exploring the most bizarre, hilarious, and downright weird facts about Family Guy that'll keep your mind occupied while you drift off to sleep. From hidden Easter eggs to behind-the-scenes secrets that even longtime fans don't know. This collection of random Family Guy trivia is perfect for those late-night moments when you need something entertaining but not too stimulating. Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone, and suddenly you're wondering about the strangest details from America's most controversial animated family. Well, you're in luck, because we've gathered dozens of fascinating tidbits that reveal just how deep the rabbit hole goes in Seth MacFarlane's animated universe. Let's start with something that might surprise you about the show's origins. Family Guy actually premiered in 1999, making it older than The Sopranos, Lost, and even The Office. But here's the kicker. The show was canceled not once, but twice by Fox. The first cancellation happened in 2002 after 3 seasons, and then again in 2005 after being brought back for a 4th season. What saved it the second time? DVD sales and reruns on Adult Swim were so successful that Fox had no choice but to bring it back permanently. Speaking of cancellations, did you know that the famous episode where Stewie and Brian get locked in a bank vault was actually written as a potential series finale? The writers thought the show might not get renewed, so they created this bottle episode as a way to give fans closure while keeping production costs low. It ended up becoming one of the most beloved episodes in the entire series. Here's something that'll make you appreciate the voice acting even more. Seth MacFarlane voices 4 main characters: Peter, Brian, Stewie, and Glenn Quagmire. But what's really impressive is that he can switch between all these voices seamlessly during recording sessions. The man is basically having conversations with himself for hours at a time. Imagine being in that recording booth and watching him argue with himself as Peter and Stewie. Now let's talk about some hidden details you've probably never noticed. In the opening credits, when the family is sitting on the couch, Stewie is always holding a different object. Sometimes it's a teddy bear, sometimes a ray gun, and occasionally it's something completely random, like a pineapple. The animators change this detail regularly, but it's so subtle that most viewers never pick up on it. The Griffin's address has actually been revealed multiple times throughout the series, but it keeps changing. Sometimes they live at 31 Spooner Street, other times it's 29 Spooner Street. This isn't continuity error. It's an intentional joke about how cartoon families can basically live anywhere the writers need them to live for the sake of a gag. Here's a weird one. Meg's full name is actually Megatron Griffin. This was revealed in one episode as a throwaway joke, but it's technically canon. Her parents named her after the Transformers villain, which honestly explains a lot about why she turned out the way she did. Imagine going through high school with that on your birth certificate. The chicken fights between Peter and Ernie the Giant Chicken aren't just random acts of cartoon violence. They're actually parodies of classic action movie fight scenes. Each fight references different films, from They Live to The Matrix. The writers spend enormous amounts of time choreographing these sequences to match specific cinematic moments frame by frame. Speaking of references, Family Guy holds the unofficial record for most pop culture references in a single animated series. The writers keep a database of potential references organized by category, decade, and obscurity level. They literally have spreadsheets dedicated to tracking which celebrities they've already made fun of and which ones are still fair game. Here's something about Brian that might change how you see him. His character was originally supposed to be much more of a background character, like a regular family pet who occasionally made sarcastic comments. But Seth MacFarlane enjoyed voicing him so much that Brian evolved into basically being Seth's mouthpiece for political and social commentary. This is why Brian often sounds like he's giving a college lecture. He essentially is. The Conway Twitty cutaways aren't just random musical interludes. They serve a specific purpose in television production. When episodes run short, the writers can insert these musical segments to pad out the runtime without having to animate new scenes or write additional dialogue. It's brilliant efficiency disguised as absurdist humor. Cleveland's house has been destroyed and rebuilt more times than any other location in the series. The writers keep track of this, and it's actually become a running competition among the staff to see who can come up with the most creative ways to demolish Cleveland's property. His house is basically the Kenny McCormick of buildings. Here's a detail about Quagmire that most people miss. His house number is 29. Peter's is 31, and Cleveland's was 33 before he moved away. But Joe's house number has never been consistently established, which has led to fan theories that he doesn't actually own his house and is just perpetually house-sitting for someone else. The famous "Whose line is it anyway" reference, where Peter lists random words, isn't actually random. Each word was carefully chosen to represent a different category of Family Guy humor. They're basically a roadmap of the show's comedic philosophy, hidden in plain sight. Stewie's accent has gradually changed over the years, from a thick British aristocrat voice to something more American. This wasn't accidental. Seth MacFarlane has said that maintaining the original accent was physically exhausting, so he's slowly been relaxing it as the series progressed. If you go back and watch early episodes, the difference is striking. The Pawtucket Brewery where Peter works is actually based on a real brewery in Rhode Island. The exterior shots are rotoscoped from actual footage of the Narragansett Brewery, though the interior is completely fictional. Local Rhode Islanders often spot familiar landmarks in the background of various episodes. Here's something about the show's animation. The characters' eyes are deliberately drawn to be slightly different sizes. Peter's left eye is always drawn slightly larger than his right, which gives him that perpetually confused expression. This asymmetry was added specifically to make him look more dopey and lovable. The reason death appears so frequently in early seasons is because the writers were originally planning to kill off a main character in every season finale, but Fox executives weren't comfortable with the concept. So death became a recurring character instead of a plot device, which is actually much funnier in hindsight. Lois's maiden name is Pewterschmidt, but her middle name has been given as both Marie and Nicole in different episodes. The writers claim this is intentional, suggesting that Lois has been lying about her middle name for years for reasons that will never be explained. The evil monkey in Chris's closet was originally supposed to be revealed as Chris's imaginary friend, but the writers decided it was funnier if he was completely real and just randomly living in their house. This decision led to one of the series' most beloved recurring characters. Here's something about the show's timeline. The Griffins have been celebrating the same holidays for over 20 years of real time, but they never age. However, the writers occasionally drop hints about the passage of time through background details like changing technology and evolving fashion trends in crowd scenes. The reason Peter's boss, Mr. Weed, died in such a bizarre way, choking on dinner rolls while watching Popeye, was because the writers wanted to establish that anyone could die at any time in the Family Guy universe for completely ridiculous reasons. It set the precedent for the show's approach to mortality as comedy. Trisha Takanawa's reporting segments are all written by the same staff writer who used to work in local television news. All of her ridiculous news stories are based on real absurd stories that the writer covered during his journalism career, just exaggerated for comedic effect. The Drunken Clam Bar where Peter and his friends hang out was modeled after Cheers, but the writers deliberately made it seedier and more depressing to contrast with that show's warm, welcoming atmosphere. It's meant to represent the difference between idealized television friendships and actual dysfunctional male bonding. Here's a weird production detail. The show's writers keep a cutaway database with hundreds of unused cutaway gags organized by setup line. If they need a quick cutaway for an episode that's running short, they can search the database by keyword and find something appropriate. Some of these unused cutaways eventually become the basis for entire episodes. The reason Herbert, the elderly neighbor, is so creepy isn't just for shock value, is inassigned. His character is actually a commentary on how society often ignores obvious warning signs about predatory behavior. The writers intentionally make him so obviously suspicious that it becomes absurd that no one in the show takes him seriously. Stewie's football-shaped head wasn't originally intentional. Seth MacFarlane was just a poor artist when he created the character, but the distinctive shape became so iconic that when the animation quality improved, they kept the weird proportions on purpose. The show's musical numbers aren't just random, they're specifically written to parody different Broadway and Hollywood musical styles. Each song is crafted to sound like it could come from a specific era of musical theater, from 1,930 seconds Hollywood musicals to modern Broadway productions. Here's something about the voice acting. When characters sing, their speaking voice actors don't always do the singing. Several characters have dedicated singing voices who are professional Broadway performers. This is why some characters sound noticeably different when they break into song. The chicken that fights Peter is named Ernie, and he has his own detailed backstory that's never fully explained in the show. According to the writers, Ernie has a family, a mortgage, and a completely normal life outside of his inexplicable rivalry with Peter. His motivations remain mysterious intentionally. Roadhouse is referenced more than any other single movie in Family Guy, appearing in over 30 different episodes in various forms. The writers have said this started as an inside joke because they couldn't believe how seriously the movie takes itself, but it evolved into genuine affection for the film's absurdity. The Conway Twitty segments were actually Seth MacFarlane's way of paying tribute to his grandfather, who was a huge country music fan. MacFarlane has said these moments are among his favorites in the entire series because they remind him of watching old variety shows with his grandfather. Meg's unpopularity isn't just a running gag. It's a deliberate commentary on how middle children often get overlooked in family dynamics. The writers have given her hidden depths that occasionally surface, suggesting she's actually the most emotionally intelligent member of the family despite being constantly ignored. The show's animation style deliberately mimics the look of 1,980 seconds Saturday morning cartoons, complete with slightly off-model character designs and limited animation techniques. This was intentional, as MacFarlane wanted the show to feel nostalgic and slightly cheap, like the cartoons he grew up watching. Here's a detail about the opening theme. The lyrics were written to sound like a generic sitcom theme song, but they're actually describing a completely dysfunctional family situation. The cheerful melody masks the fact that the words are talking about how nothing in this family works properly. The reason Family Guy episodes often feel like collections of unrelated sketches is because that's exactly what they are. The writers start with a basic premise and then build around it with whatever random ideas they've been wanting to explore. This approach gives the show its unique, chaotic energy. So there you have it. Dozens of random Family Guy facts to occupy your mind as you drift off to sleep. From production secrets to hidden meanings, the world of Family Guy is far more complex and deliberate than it might appear on the surface. Whether you're a longtime fan or just discovering the show, these little details add extra layers to every rewatch. Sweet dreams. And remember, somewhere in Quahog, Peter Griffin is probably doing something spectacularly stupid, while Stewie plots world domination, and Brian writes terrible novels. The chaos never stops in the Griffin household, and honestly, we wouldn't want it any other way. Hey there, night owls and Family Guy fanatics. If you're settling in for some sleep but your brain is still buzzing, you've clicked on the perfect video. Tonight we're diving deep into the wonderfully weird world of Quahog, with some absolutely wild Family Guy facts that'll either lull you to sleep or keep you awake, pondering the bizarre genius of Seth MacFarlane's creation. Picture this scenario. You're lying in bed, eyes getting heavy, but your mind keeps wandering. Maybe you're thinking about that awkward conversation you had at work, or wondering why you ate that entire bag of chips for dinner. Well, forget all that mundane stuff because we're about to embark on a journey through 20 years of Family Guy madness that's guaranteed to give your brain something much more entertaining to chew on. Let's start with something that might surprise you about the show's origins. When Seth MacFarlane first pitched Family Guy, he was just 24 years old and working at Hanna-Barbera. The network executives were so impressed with his 15-minute pilot that they ordered the series on the spot. But here's the kicker. MacFarlane had never actually run a television show before. He was essentially handed the keys to a multi-million-dollar production with zero experience as a showrunner. Talk about fake it till you make it. Speaking of MacFarlane, did you know he was supposed to be on one of the planes that hit the World Trade Center on September 11th? He had a ticket for American Airlines Flight 11, but overslept after a night of drinking and missed the flight by just 10 minutes. When he arrived at the airport and learned what had happened, he realized how close he'd come to never creating the Griffin family we know and love today. It's one of those sliding door moments that makes you think about how different pop culture would be if he'd caught that flight. Now let's talk about Brian Griffin, the family's intellectual dog who walks on two legs and drives a Prius. Brian's character was actually inspired by MacFarlane's own dog, also named Brian, who passed away in the early 2000s. The real Brian was a white Labrador retriever, and MacFarlane has said that losing him was one of the most difficult experiences of his life. When the show temporarily killed off cartoon Brian in 2013, the fan backlash was so intense that MacFarlane received death threats. People were legitimately angry about a fictional dog's death, which says something about how attached viewers had become to these animated characters. The temporary death of Brian actually serves as a perfect example of how deeply fans connect with Family Guy's characters, even though they're supposed to be parodies and caricatures. When Brian was hit by a car and replaced by a new dog named Vinny, voiced by Tony Sirico from The Sopranos, social media exploded with outrage. There were online petitions, angry tweets, and even real-world protests. The writers had planned to bring Brian back all along. It was meant to be a multi-episode arc exploring how the family would cope with loss, but the reaction was so overwhelmingly negative that they cut the storyline short and resurrected Brian after just 2 episodes. Here's something that might blow your mind about the show's production process. Each episode of Family Guy takes approximately 10 months to create, from start to finish. That means when you're watching a new episode that just aired, the writers were working on the initial script almost a year ago. This long production timeline sometimes creates weird situations where the show references current events that are no longer current by the time the episode airs, or misses major cultural moments entirely because they couldn't pivot quickly enough. The cutaway gags that Family Guy is famous for were actually born out of necessity rather than creative choice. In the early seasons, episodes would often run short, and the writers needed quick ways to fill time. These random flashbacks and non-sequitur scenes were easy to animate and didn't require complex storytelling or character development. What started as a time-filling technique became the show's signature storytelling device, copied by countless other animated series. Let's dive into some character-specific weirdness. Stewie Griffin's distinctive football-shaped head wasn't originally intended to be football-shaped at all. MacFarlane has said that Stewie's head design was meant to evoke a more oval, egg-like shape that would make him look unnatural and slightly alien. The football comparison only came up after the character was already established, and now it's impossible to unsee. Stewie's sexuality has been a topic of debate among fans for years, but MacFarlane has given conflicting answers about whether the baby is gay, straight, or something else entirely. In some interviews, he suggested that Stewie is gay, while in others, he said the character is too young for sexual orientation to be relevant. The ambiguity seems to be intentional, allowing viewers to interpret the character however they want while keeping the writers free to take Stewie in any direction the story demands. Peter Griffin's voice is actually just Seth MacFarlane doing an impression of a security guard he knew growing up in Connecticut. The guard worked at the animation studio where MacFarlane interned during college, and he would do this exaggerated New England accent that MacFarlane found hilarious. Years later, when he needed a voice for Peter, he remembered that security guard and based the entire character's speech pattern on him. The show's relationship with censorship has always been complicated and fascinating. While Family Guy pushes boundaries constantly, there are still certain words and topics that are completely off limits for broadcast television. The writers have developed an entire arsenal of creative workarounds, using sound effects, cutaways, and strategic editing to suggest things they can't show explicitly. Sometimes the censored version is actually funnier than what they originally wrote because the restrictions force them to be more creative. Cleveland Brown's spin-off series, The Cleveland Show, was actually planned before Family Guy was even renewed for its 4th season. MacFarlane and the writers knew they wanted to explore Cleveland's character more deeply, but they weren't sure Family Guy would survive long enough to make it happen. When the show came back from cancellation stronger than ever, they were able to move forward with Cleveland's solo series, though it only lasted 4 seasons before Cleveland returned to Quahog. The character of Meg Griffin has gone through more voice actress changes than any other main character on the show. Lacey Chabert voiced Meg for the 1st season and part of the 2nd, but left due to scheduling conflicts with her film career. Mila Kunis took over the role and has been playing Meg ever since, but many fans still don't realize there was ever a different voice actress. Interestingly, Kunis was only 15 when she started voicing Meg, making her younger than the character she was playing. Family Guy's cancellation and resurrection story is one of the most unusual in television history. The show was canceled after just 3 seasons due to low ratings, but DVD sales and syndication reruns on Adult Swim introduced it to a whole new audience. The ratings for the reruns were actually higher than the ratings for new episodes had been when the show first aired. This success convinced Fox to bring the show back, making Family Guy the first canceled series to be revived purely based on DVD sales and cable reruns. The show's animation style has evolved significantly over the years, though casual viewers might not notice the changes. Early episodes were animated using traditional cell animation techniques, while current episodes are created entirely using digital animation software. The digital process allows for more complex visual effects and faster production times, but some longtime fans argue that the hand-drawn episodes had a warmer, more organic feel. Here's something that might surprise you about the show's writing process. Despite Family Guy's reputation for random stream-of-consciousness humor, every single cutaway gag and non-sequitur moment is carefully planned and scripted. The writers spend weeks crafting these seemingly spontaneous moments, testing them with focus groups and refining them until they hit just the right note of absurdity. What feels effortlessly random is actually the result of meticulous preparation and timing. The character of Quagmire was originally going to be named Quahog, after the town where the Griffins live. But the writers realized that having a character and a location with the same name would be confusing for viewers, so they changed it to Quagmire at the last minute. The name Quagmire is actually a play on words, combining the idea of being stuck in a difficult situation with the character's, shall we say, adventurous romantic life. Death, the Grim Reaper character who occasionally appears on the show, was voiced by Norm Macdonald in his early appearances. Macdonald's deadpan delivery was perfect for the role, but scheduling conflicts meant he couldn't continue voicing the character regularly. Adam Carolla took over the role for several episodes before it eventually went to other voice actors. Death's inconsistent voice casting reflects one of the challenges of using celebrity guest stars for recurring characters. The show has featured some truly bizarre celebrity cameos over the years, but one of the strangest was Rush Limbaugh playing himself in an episode where Brian becomes conservative. Limbaugh recorded his lines during a commercial break of his radio show, and the writers had to work around his limited availability by keeping his dialogue minimal and straightforward. The episode aired during the height of Limbaugh's popularity, and his appearance generated significant media attention. Family Guy's approach to continuity is deliberately inconsistent, which allows the writers tremendous creative freedom, but sometimes confuses viewers who are paying close attention. Characters die and come back to life. Major events happen and are never mentioned again. And the timeline of the show makes absolutely no sense if you try to analyze it logically. This isn't accidental. The writers have explicitly said they prioritize individual episode quality over long-term story coherence. The show's merchandising success has been almost as impressive as its television ratings. Family Guy merchandise has generated hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, with everything from t-shirts and coffee mugs to video games and board games. The talking plush toys of Stewie and Brian were particularly popular, though they had to be carefully programmed to avoid saying anything too inappropriate for younger children who might play with them. One of the most interesting aspects of Family Guy's production is how they handle controversial episodes. The writers have an informal rating system for how potentially offensive each episode might be, and they adjust the marketing and promotion accordingly. Episodes that push boundaries harder than usual often air with less advanced publicity, allowing them to reach audiences without generating pre-broadcast controversy that might lead to censorship. The show's relationship with Fox Network executives has been notoriously rocky over the years. MacFarlane has been vocal about his frustrations with network interference, and several episodes have included not-so-subtle jabs at Fox's programming decisions and corporate culture. Despite this tension, Family Guy remains one of Fox's most valuable properties, giving MacFarlane significant leverage in creative disputes. Here's a production detail that most viewers never think about, but affects every single episode. The timing of animated comedy is completely different from live-action comedy because animated characters can move and react in ways that real actors cannot. Jokes that would fall flat in live action can work perfectly in animation because the visual possibilities are unlimited. The writers and animators work closely together to ensure that the timing of visual gags matches the rhythm of the dialogue. The voice recording process for Family Guy is also unique in the animation world. Most animated shows record each actor separately, but Family Guy often brings the main cast together for group recording sessions. This allows for more natural interactions and improvisation, though it also makes the recording process more expensive and time-consuming. Seth MacFarlane voices multiple characters, so he sometimes has to have conversations with himself, switching between Peter, Brian, and Stewie within the same scene. As you're drifting off to sleep tonight, think about this final fact. Family Guy has now been on the air for over 2 decades, making it one of the longest-running animated series in television history. Kids who watched the first episode when it premiered in 1999 are now adults with children of their own. The show has outlasted multiple generations of network executives, survived cancellation, and adapted to completely different media landscapes, from broadcast television to streaming services. The Griffin family has become as familiar to many people as their own relatives, which is both impressive and slightly disturbing when you consider how dysfunctional that family actually is. But maybe that's the secret to Family Guy's enduring appeal. In a world where real families can be just as complicated and bizarre as the fictional ones we see on television, there's something comforting about knowing that no matter how weird your own family dynamics might be, at least you're not dealing with a talking baby who's constantly plotting world domination, and a dog who's writing the great American novel. Sweet dreams, and remember, life's a lot like Family Guy. Sometimes it makes perfect sense. Sometimes it's completely random, and sometimes you just have to go with it and hope for the best. Whether you're a longtime fan or a newcomer to the show, these facts give you a glimpse into the creative chaos that makes Family Guy such a unique entry in television history. Sleep well, and maybe you'll dream about Quahog tonight. Have you ever found yourself lying in bed, scrolling through endless videos, desperately searching for something that will help you drift off to sleep? Tonight, I'm going to take you on the most relaxing journey through the bizarre and comforting world of Family Guy lore. From the show's humble beginnings to its most obscure character backstories, we'll explore everything at a gentle pace that's perfect for winding down. So grab your favorite blanket, dim those lights, and let's dive into the surprisingly deep mythology of America's most chaotic animated family. Picture this scene. From 1998, a young animator named Seth MacFarlane sits in his tiny apartment, sketching what would become one of television's most enduring families. The Griffin household wasn't born from a single moment of inspiration, but rather from years of MacFarlane's observations about American family dynamics, mixed with his love for classic comedy and animation. What started as a simple cartoon about a dysfunctional family would evolve into something much more complex and layered than anyone could have imagined. The Griffin family home itself tells a story that spans decades. Located at 31 Spooner Street in the fictional town of Quahog, Rhode Island, this house has witnessed countless adventures, disasters, and heartwarming moments. The architecture reflects a typical New England colonial style, but if you look closely at the show's evolution, you'll notice subtle changes over the years. The living room layout has shifted, rooms have appeared and disappeared, and the overall color palette has grown warmer and more inviting as the series matured. Let's start our journey with Peter Griffin, the family patriarch whose childlike wonder and complete lack of filter have driven countless storylines. Peter's background is far more intricate than his simple exterior suggests. Born to an Irish Catholic family, Peter discovered in his adult years that his biological father was actually Mickey McFinnigan, an Irish immigrant who had a brief relationship with his mother. This revelation came during one of the show's more emotionally resonant episodes, adding unexpected depth to Peter's character. Peter's employment history reads like a comedy of errors, but each job has contributed to the show's rich tapestry of recurring characters and locations. His most stable position at the Pawtucket Patriot Brewery introduced us to characters like Angela, Carl, and Joe Swanson. The brewery itself serves as more than just a workplace in the show's mythology. It represents Peter's connection to his blue-collar roots and provides a setting for some of the series' most memorable workplace comedy moments. The relationship between Peter and his wife Lois forms the emotional core of many episodes. Lois Pewterschmidt Griffin comes from wealth and privilege. Having grown up in the affluent Pewterschmidt family, her father Carter represents old money and conservative values, while her mother Barbara provides a more nurturing presence. This class divide between Peter and Lois creates ongoing tension and comedy throughout the series, but it also grounds their relationship in something recognizably real. Lois's musical background adds another layer to her character that often gets overlooked. Her piano skills and brief stint as a lounge singer reveal artistic aspirations that were set aside for family life. These talents emerge periodically throughout the series, reminding us that Lois is more than just the family's voice of reason. Her complex relationship with her own identity, caught between her privileged upbringing and her current middle-class life, provides subtle character development that rewards longtime viewers. Moving to the next generation, Meg Griffin represents perhaps the show's most tragic figure. The eldest Griffin child serves as the family's perpetual scapegoat, but her character development over the years reveals someone far more resilient and complex than her treatment suggests. Meg's academic achievements, her various romantic relationships, and her occasional moments of standing up for herself paint a picture of a young woman struggling to find her place in both her family and the world at large. The running gag of Meg being ignored or mistreated by her family actually serves a deeper narrative purpose. It reflects real family dynamics where one member becomes the target for everyone else's frustrations and insecurities. While played for comedy, Meg's situation often touches on genuine issues of family dysfunction and teenage alienation that many viewers recognize from their own experiences. Chris Griffin, the middle child, embodies adolescent awkwardness with surprising authenticity. His artistic talents, particularly his drawing abilities, provide glimpses into a creative soul trapped in an uncomfortable body. Chris's relationship with his father Peter oscillates between moments of genuine connection and complete misunderstanding. These dynamics reflect the complexity of father-son relationships during the teenage years, when both parties are struggling to communicate across generational and emotional barriers. The youngest Griffin, Stewie, presents the show's most fascinating character study. Initially conceived as a one-dimensional villain bent on world domination and matricide, Stewie has evolved into something far more nuanced. His genius-level intellect, time travel capabilities, and sophisticated vocabulary create endless storytelling possibilities. But beneath the surface, Stewie's character explores themes of identity, sexuality, and the struggle between intellectual superiority and emotional immaturity. Stewie's relationship with the family dog Brian forms one of the series' most enduring friendships. Their adventures together, from time travel escapades to simple conversations in the Griffin living room, showcase a bond that transcends species and age. Brian, as the family's intellectual and moral center, often serves as Stewie's guide to understanding human emotions and relationships. Brian Griffin's own backstory adds depth to what could have been a simple talking dog character. His struggles with alcoholism, his failed writing career, and his complicated romantic relationships make him surprisingly relatable, despite his canine nature. Brian's liberal political views and intellectual pretensions often clash with the Griffin family's more straightforward approach to life, creating tension that drives many storylines. The supporting characters in Family Guy's universe each bring their own rich histories and ongoing storylines. Cleveland Brown, before his departure to star in his own spin-off series, represented loyalty and friendship in Peter's life. His patient tolerance of Peter's schemes and his own quiet dignity provided a stabilizing influence on the group dynamic. Even after his return to the main series, Cleveland's character maintains this role while showing growth and change from his experiences. Quagmire's character presents one of the show's most controversial yet compelling figures. His extreme libertine lifestyle and catchphrase delivery mask a more complex personality that occasionally emerges in episodes focusing on his background. His military service, his relationship with his parents, and his rare moments of vulnerability reveal someone using humor and bravado to cope with deeper psychological issues. Joe Swanson's paralysis could have been handled as simple disabled character representation, but the show has consistently portrayed him as a complete person whose disability is just one aspect of his identity. His career in law enforcement, his marriage to Bonnie, and his fierce determination to live life fully make him an inspiring presence in the show's ensemble cast. Joe's friendship with Peter and the other neighbors demonstrates how genuine relationships transcend physical limitations. The town of Quahog itself functions almost as another character in the series. From the drunken clam bar where Peter and his friends gather, to the various shops and locations that appear throughout the series, Quahog feels like a lived-in community with its own personality and rhythm. The recurring businesses and landmarks create a sense of continuity and familiarity that grounds the show's more outlandish storylines in something recognizable. The Drunken Clam deserves special attention as the series' most important recurring location outside the Griffin home. This working-class bar serves as Peter's refuge from domestic responsibilities and the setting for countless conversations between the main male characters. The bar's atmosphere, with its dim lighting and worn furniture, perfectly captures the feeling of a neighborhood establishment where everyone knows everyone else's business. Family Guy's approach to continuity creates an interesting paradox. While the show often resets situations for comedic purposes, certain character developments and relationships maintain consistency across episodes and seasons. This selective continuity allows the writers to explore serious themes while maintaining the show's comedic flexibility. Death episodes are mourned, relationships evolve, and characters grow older, but the core dynamic remains stable enough to support the show's humor. The series' numerous pop culture references and cutaway gags serve more than just comedic purposes. They create a shared cultural vocabulary that connects different episodes and seasons. Regular viewers begin to recognize patterns and callbacks that reward their loyalty and attention. These references also anchor the show in specific time periods, creating a kind of cultural archaeology that future viewers can explore. The show's handling of controversial topics demonstrates a willingness to tackle difficult subjects while maintaining its comedic identity. Episodes dealing with death, disability, sexuality, and family trauma show surprising emotional depth when they choose to engage seriously with these themes. This balance between comedy and genuine emotion gives the series more staying power than pure parody or shock comedy alone could provide. Music plays a crucial role in Family Guy's storytelling. From Conway Twitty performances that frustrate viewers to elaborate musical numbers that showcase the voice cast's talents. These musical interludes serve as palate cleansers between intense storylines and provide opportunities for character development through song. The show's musical choices, whether original compositions or classic covers, contribute to its overall emotional landscape. The Griffin family's relationships with their extended family members add additional layers to the show's mythology. Lois's wealthy parents, Peter's adoptive and biological fathers, and the various relatives who appear throughout the series create a broader family tree that influences character motivations and storylines. These relationships often drive holiday episodes and special occasions that bring out different aspects of the main characters. As we wind down this exploration of Family Guy's rich universe, it's worth noting how the show has maintained its relevance across multiple decades. The characters have aged and evolved while retaining their essential characteristics. New viewers can jump in at almost any point, while longtime fans are rewarded with deep continuity and character development that spans hundreds of episodes. The comfort that many people find in rewatching Family Guy episodes comes from this familiarity with the characters and their world. Like visiting old friends, spending time with the Griffin family provides a sense of continuity and connection that can be especially soothing during stressful times. The show's blend of absurd comedy and genuine emotion creates a unique viewing experience that can be both engaging and relaxing. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, you can rest easy, knowing that somewhere in the animated universe, the Griffin family continues their chaotic but loving existence at 31 Spooner Street. Peter is probably hatching another ill-conceived scheme. Lois is maintaining her patient dignity, Meg is persevering through another day of family dysfunction, Chris is discovering something new about himself, Stewie is plotting something elaborate, and Brian is providing wise commentary on it all. In Quahog, Rhode Island, life goes on with all its complications, humor, and unexpected moments of genuine heart. Sweet dreams, and remember that sometimes the most comforting stories are the ones about families who, despite all their flaws and chaos, somehow manage to stick together through everything life throws their way. You know that feeling when you're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone, and suddenly you realize you've been watching Family Guy clips for 3 hours straight? Tonight, we're diving deep into the twisted, hilarious, and surprisingly complex world of Family Griffin and his dysfunctional Rhode Island family. So grab your favorite blanket, dim those lights, and let me take you on a journey through decades of animated chaos that somehow became one of television's most enduring franchises. Picture this. It's 1999, and a young animator named Seth MacFarlane is sitting in his apartment, probably eating cereal for dinner, when he creates what would become a cultural phenomenon. But here's the thing most people don't realize about Family Guy. Beneath all the cutaway gags, pop culture references, and Stewie's diabolical schemes lies a surprisingly intricate web of character development, running storylines, and hidden details that span over 2 decades. Let's start with the Griffin family themselves, because honestly, they're way more complex than people give them credit for. Peter Griffin isn't just a bumbling dad who works at a brewery. He's actually a fascinating study in arrested development. Throughout the series, we've learned that his childlike behavior stems from a complicated relationship with his father, Francis Griffin, a strict Irish Catholic who never showed Peter affection. This explains so much about why Peter desperately seeks approval, while simultaneously rebelling against authority figures. But here's where it gets interesting. Peter's job at the Pawtucket Brewery isn't just random, it's actually owned by Carter Pewterschmidt, his father-in-law, which creates this whole dynamic where Peter is constantly trying to prove himself to a man who sees him as completely inadequate. The brewery itself has become this recurring location where some of the show's most memorable moments happen, from Peter's various workplace shenanigans to the time he discovered the brewery was basically stealing Budweiser's recipe. Now let's talk about Lois, because she's probably the most underappreciated character in the entire series. On the surface, she's the long-suffering wife who puts up with Peter's antics. But dig deeper, and you'll find a former wild child from a wealthy family who gave up everything for love. Lois comes from money, serious money, and she chose to live in a modest house in Quahog with a man her parents despise. Her maiden name, Pewterschmidt, carries weight in their social circle, but she rejected that lifestyle. The fascinating thing about Lois is how the show gradually reveals her past. She was this rebellious rich girl who dated musicians, experimented with different lifestyles, and had a completely different personality before settling down. Sometimes that old Lois emerges, usually when she's pushed too far, and those episodes are absolutely brilliant because they show the complexity beneath her patient exterior. Griffin represents something really interesting in the show's evolution. Initially, he was just the awkward teenage son, but over time, the writers developed him into this surprisingly deep character dealing with typical teenage issues, amplified by his family's dysfunction. His relationship with his father is particularly touching because Peter, despite his flaws, genuinely tries to connect with Chris, even though he has no idea how to be a proper role model. What makes Chris compelling is how he's actually the most emotionally intelligent member of the family. He sees through his parents' problems, understands his sister's struggles, and often serves as the voice of reason, even though he's still figuring out his own identity. His various crushes, friendships, and coming-of-age moments provide some of the show's most genuine emotional beats. Griffin. Oh, poor Meg. She's become this cultural touchstone for teenage awkwardness. But there's something genuinely tragic about her character that goes beyond the surface-level jokes. The constant rejection and abuse she faces from her family would destroy most people, but Meg keeps trying. She keeps hoping for acceptance, keeps pursuing her dreams, keeps believing that maybe tomorrow will be different. The really dark aspect of Meg's story is how the family uses her as their collective punching bag to avoid dealing with their own problems. When Peter and Lois are having marriage troubles, they unite in mocking Meg. When Chris feels insecure, he puts down Meg. It's this twisted family dynamic where she serves as the lightning rod for everyone else's dysfunction. But here's what's brilliant about the show's treatment of Meg. Occasionally, they give her episodes where she fights back or finds genuine happiness, and those moments hit differently because we've watched her suffer for so long. When she stands up to her family or finds someone who appreciates her, it feels earned in a way that's surprisingly powerful for a comedy show. Then there's Stewie, the baby genius with unclear sexual orientation and a British accent that nobody questions. Stewie's character has gone through the most dramatic evolution of anyone in the show. He started as this one-note villain baby trying to kill his mother and take over the world, but gradually became this complex character dealing with identity issues, family dynamics, and his relationship with Brian. The Stewie-Brian friendship is honestly the heart of the entire series. These two characters, despite their obvious differences, have this incredible bond built on mutual respect and genuine affection. Their adventures together, from time travel to road trips, provide some of the show's best storytelling because the writers can explore deeper themes through their relationship. What's fascinating about Stewie is how his intelligence serves as both a blessing and a curse. He can build time machines and understand complex scientific concepts, but he's, quote, still emotionally a child dealing with typical childhood fears and insecurities. His relationship with his mother is particularly complex because while he originally wanted to kill her, he gradually develops this deep love for Lois that he struggles to express. Brian Griffin deserves his own deep dive because he's arguably the show's most controversial character. He's this liberal intellectual dog who writes novels nobody reads, drinks martinis, and constantly preaches about social issues while being fundamentally flawed himself. Brian represents this specific type of person we all know, the friend who talks a good game about being progressive and enlightened, but whose actions don't always match their rhetoric. The genius of Brian's character is how the show gradually reveals his hypocrisy without completely destroying his likability. He's pretentious, he's selfish, he's often wrong about things he claims to understand, but he's also capable of genuine growth and moments of real insight. His romantic relationships throughout the series serve as this ongoing commentary on his character flaws and his struggle to become a better person. One of the most interesting aspects of Family Guy lore is how the show handles continuity. On the surface, it seems like a show where anything can happen and nothing really matters. But if you pay attention, there's actually a surprising amount of consistency in character development and running storylines. The writers remember details from episodes that aired years ago and will call back to them in unexpected ways. Take the ongoing rivalry between Peter and the giant chicken, Ernie. What started as a throwaway gag about expired coupons evolved into this epic saga spanning multiple episodes and featuring increasingly elaborate fight sequences. These battles have become legendary among fans because they represent the show's commitment to taking absurd premises to their logical extreme. The show's relationship with death is particularly fascinating. Characters die and come back, timelines get altered, and reality bends in ways that should break the show's internal logic. But somehow, it all works because the emotional core remains consistent. When major characters like Brian temporarily died, the fan reaction was intense because despite all the show's surreal elements, viewers had formed genuine attachments to these characters. Let's talk about Quahog itself, because the town is almost a character in its own right. This fictional Rhode Island community is populated by an incredible cast of recurring characters who each bring their own flavor to the show's universe. There's Joe Swanson, the paralyzed police officer whose determination and positive attitude contrast sharply with his neighbor's various dysfunctions. Cleveland Brown, before he got his own spin-off, represented this calm, reasonable voice in the chaos of Quahog. His friendship with Peter, despite Peter's often thoughtless behavior, showed this theme that runs throughout the series about how genuine friendships can survive even the most ridiculous circumstances. Glenn Quagmire is probably the most controversial neighbor because he's simultaneously hilarious and deeply disturbing. His character serves as this extreme example of toxic masculinity taken to absurd lengths, but the show occasionally gives him moments of vulnerability that suggest there's more to him than just his predatory behavior. The local businesses in Quahog each have their own personalities too. The Drunken Clam isn't just a bar where the guys hang out. It's this working-class sanctuary where they can escape their domestic responsibilities and bond over beer and television. Jerome, the bartender, represents this stable, wise presence who's seen everything and judges nothing. One of the most underappreciated aspects of Family Guy lore is how it handles social commentary. Yes, the show is often criticized for pushing boundaries, but if you look closely, there's actually a consistent moral framework underlying most episodes. The show frequently punishes characters for their bad behavior, even if those consequences don't carry over to future episodes. Peter's schemes usually backfire spectacularly, teaching him lessons he immediately forgets. Stewie's attempts at manipulation often result in him learning something about empathy or human connection. Brian's pretensions are regularly deflated by reality. The show has this way of exploring serious topics through absurd scenarios that somehow makes the underlying messages more palatable. The cutaway gags, which are probably the show's most recognizable feature, serve a purpose beyond just getting laughs. They provide breathing room in episodes, allow for pop culture commentary, and give the writers freedom to explore ideas that wouldn't fit into the main storyline. Some of these gags have become so iconic that they've entered the broader cultural conversation. What's really impressive about Family Guy's longevity is how it's managed to stay relevant across multiple decades of changing cultural landscape. The show started in the late 90s, survived cancellation, came back stronger than ever, and continues to find new audiences while maintaining its core identity. That takes real skill from the writers, voice actors, and animators who bring this world to life. The voice acting, especially, deserves recognition because Seth MacFarlane voices multiple main characters while maintaining distinct personalities for each one. Peter's Rhode Island accent, Stewie's British sophistication, Brian's intellectual pretensions, roulette. Each voice tells you everything you need to know about the character before they even start talking. As we've journeyed through this animated universe tonight, what emerges is a picture of a show that's far more thoughtful and complex than its reputation might suggest. Family Guy works because beneath all the chaos and controversy, it's fundamentally about family. Messy, complicated, dysfunctional family, but family nonetheless. The Griffins may be terrible to each other most of the time, but when it really matters, they come together. Peter and Lois may have a dysfunctional marriage, but there are moments of genuine love and connection. The kids may be weird and damaged, but they're finding their way through adolescence and childhood as best they can. Maybe that's why Family Guy has endured for so long, and why we keep coming back to Quahog night after night. In a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable, there's something comforting about a fictional family that's even more messed up than we are, but somehow keeps going anyway. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that somewhere in Rhode Island, Peter Griffin is probably doing something incredibly stupid, Lois is wondering how her life got to this point, and Stewie's plotting world domination, while secretly just wanting someone to read him a bedtime story. Sweet dreams, and thanks for joining me in the wonderfully weird world of Family Guy. What if I told you that underneath all the random cutaway gags and crude humor, Family Guy has been building one of the most intricate and bizarre mythologies in television history? Tonight, we're diving deep into the hidden lore that connects everything from Stewie's time travel adventures to the cosmic horror lurking beneath Quahog's seemingly normal surface. Get comfortable, because this journey through the Griffin family's secret universe is going to be a wild ride that might just change how you see every episode forever. Let's start with something that seems innocent enough, but opens up an entire rabbit hole of implications. Have you ever noticed that Stewie Griffin isn't just a baby with advanced intelligence? He's actually a being that exists outside the normal flow of time itself. Throughout the series, we've seen him build time machines, travel to alternate dimensions, and even meet future versions of himself. But here's where it gets interesting. In several episodes, Stewie demonstrates knowledge of events that haven't happened yet, and sometimes he seems to be aware that he's in a television show. This isn't just random comedy writing. There's a consistent pattern that suggests Stewie might be some kind of temporal entity that chose to inhabit the body of a baby for reasons we're only beginning to understand. Think about it. He's built multiple time machines from scratch using household items. He's created clones, developed advanced weaponry, and even constructed interdimensional portals. No normal baby, no matter how intelligent, could accomplish these things without some kind of supernatural assistance or inherent cosmic power. The evidence becomes even more compelling when you consider his relationship with Brian. Unlike other family members who seem to understand Stewie only sporadically, Brian consistently communicates with him on an adult level. But Brian isn't just any dog. He's a talking dog who drives cars, writes novels, and has existential crises about the nature of reality. The fact that these two characters can communicate perfectly suggests they might both be operating on a different plane of existence than the rest of the family. Speaking of Brian, let's explore his own mysterious origins. He was found as a stray by the Griffin family, but his background remains largely unexplained. He drinks alcohol, smokes cigarettes, and engages in romantic relationships with humans. In several episodes, we've seen him question his own nature and struggle with the absurdity of being a talking dog in a world where most animals don't speak. This existential awareness might be the key to understanding his true nature. There's a theory that Brian represents a bridge between the normal world and the supernatural elements that permeate Quahog. He's intelligent enough to recognize the strangeness around him, but trapped in a form that prevents him from fully participating in human society. His conversations with Stewie often touch on philosophical and scientific concepts that suggest both characters are aware of deeper truths about their reality. Now let's talk about Peter Griffin himself, because beneath his bumbling exterior lies something far more complex. Peter has survived explosions, falls from incredible heights, and injuries that should have killed him dozens of times over. He's also demonstrated superhuman strength in various episodes, lifting cars and fighting characters with obvious supernatural abilities. But more importantly, Peter seems to be a nexus point for the weird events that happen in Quahog. Everywhere Peter goes, reality seems to bend slightly. Characters break into musical numbers for no reason. People appear and disappear without explanation. The laws of physics become suggestions rather than rules. It's as if Peter's presence weakens the barriers between the normal world and something much stranger. This could explain why the Griffin family attracts so many bizarre situations and supernatural encounters. Consider the episode where Peter gains psychic powers, or the times he's been visited by supernatural entities. These aren't isolated incidents, but part of a larger pattern that suggests Peter might be unknowingly channeling some kind of cosmic energy. His simple-minded nature could be a protective mechanism that prevents him from fully comprehending his own power, because if Peter ever became truly aware of his abilities, the consequences could be catastrophic. Lois Griffin presents her own mysteries. On the surface, she's the long-suffering wife trying to keep her chaotic family together, but Lois has her own dark secrets and hidden depths. She comes from a wealthy family with connections that extend far beyond what we see on screen. Her father, Carter Pewterschmidt, isn't just rich, he's connected to military-industrial complexes and shadowy organizations that operate behind the scenes. Throughout the series, Lois has demonstrated skills and knowledge that suggest extensive training in areas most housewives would never encounter. She's fluent in multiple languages, skilled in combat, and has connections to criminal organizations. In several episodes, she's shown leading double lives that involve activities ranging from boxing to working with international intelligence agencies. These aren't random plot devices, but hints at a much larger story about who Lois really is and why she ended up with the Griffin family. There's also the question of how Lois manages to hold the family together despite the constant chaos. She seems to have an almost supernatural ability to adapt to whatever insane situation her family creates. Whether it's dealing with Stewie's death rays or Peter's latest scheme to destroy the neighborhood, Lois always finds a way to restore some semblance of normalcy. This suggests she might be operating with knowledge or abilities that go beyond what we see on the surface. The town of Quahog itself is a character in this strange mythology. It's supposedly a normal Rhode Island community, but the events that occur there on a regular basis defy all logic. The town has been destroyed and rebuilt multiple times. Its residents include everything from former Nazis to aliens to interdimensional beings. The mayor is a corrupt official who openly admits to criminal activities, yet somehow the town continues to function. What's really interesting is how quickly the residents of Quahog accept supernatural events. When a chicken fights Peter through half the town, destroying buildings and causing massive property damage, everyone just goes back to their normal lives afterward. When time travel events create paradoxes that should fundamentally alter reality, the town adapts without question. This suggests that Quahog exists in a state of flexible reality where the impossible becomes routine. The recurring locations in Quahog also hint at deeper mysteries. The Drunken Clam isn't just a bar. It's a place where characters regularly receive prophetic dreams and encounter supernatural entities. Quahog Elementary School has been the site of numerous reality-bending events. Even the Griffin house itself seems to exist partially outside normal space and time, with rooms that appear and disappear and basement areas that extend far beyond what the exterior structures should allow. Let's dive deeper into the show's treatment of death and resurrection, because Family Guy has a very loose relationship with mortality that suggests something profound about the nature of its reality. Characters die regularly, sometimes multiple times in the same episode, only to return without explanation. Brian has died and been brought back to life. Kenny McCormick from South Park has appeared in Family Guy, bringing his own resurrection mythology with him. This casual treatment of death isn't just a comedy device. It suggests that the characters exist in a reality where death is temporary or where multiple versions of the same character can exist simultaneously. Stewie has encountered alternate versions of himself and his family members from different timelines and dimensions. These aren't dreams or imagination sequences, but actual encounters with other versions of reality. The implications of this go far beyond simple comedy. If characters can die and return, if alternate versions of themselves exist in parallel dimensions, then the entire show might be taking place across multiple realities simultaneously. Each episode could be showing us events from different timelines or dimensions where slightly different versions of the characters exist. This would explain the show's inconsistent continuity and the way characters sometimes seem to forget major events from previous episodes. They're not forgetting. They're simply different versions of themselves who never experienced those events. The show isn't ignoring its own history. It's showing us glimpses of an infinite multiverse where every possible variation of the Griffin family's story plays out simultaneously. The religious and mythological elements in Family Guy also contribute to this deeper lore. The show has featured appearances by God, Jesus, the devil, and various other religious figures. These aren't parody versions, but actual supernatural entities who interact with the characters and influence events in Quahog. This suggests that the show's reality operates under a cosmology where divine and infernal forces are real and active. More intriguingly, these supernatural entities often seem to have specific interest in the Griffin family. God has personally intervened in their lives multiple times. Death himself has appeared as a character and formed relationships with family members. This level of cosmic attention suggests that the Griffins aren't just random people, but individuals who play important roles in some larger supernatural conflict or cosmic plan. The show's frequent use of cutaway gags might also be more than just random humor. These sequences often show Peter or other characters in completely different time periods, locations, or situations. What if these aren't imaginary scenarios, but glimpses of other realities where versions of these characters actually exist? The cutaway structure could be the show's way of revealing the multiverse that underlies its narrative. This interpretation would mean that every absurd cutaway gag is actually a window into an alternate dimension. Peter as a knight in medieval times isn't just a joke, it's a glimpse of a reality where a version of Peter actually lived during that era. The seemingly random nature of these sequences could be showing us how the barriers between dimensions occasionally thin, allowing characters to perceive events from parallel worlds. Cleveland Brown's spin-off show and eventual return to Family Guy takes on new significance in this context. His move to Virginia and subsequent return isn't just a narrative convenience, it's evidence of how characters can move between different versions of reality. The Cleveland show might have been showing us events from a dimension where Cleveland never moved back to Quahog, while his return to Family Guy represents a convergence of timelines. The relationship between Family Guy and other animated shows in the same universe adds another layer to this mythology. The Simpsons crossover episode wasn't just a marketing stunt. It was a demonstration that these shows exist in connected realities. Characters can travel between Springfield and Quahog because these locations exist in the same multiverse, just in different dimensional frequencies. As we dive deeper into the show's lore, we start to see patterns that suggest a hidden intelligence behind the chaos. The seemingly random events that plague the Griffin family might actually be tests or challenges designed by cosmic forces to determine their worthiness for some greater purpose. Stewie's advanced intelligence, Brian's existential awareness, Peter's reality-warping presence, and Lois's mysterious background could all be pieces of a larger puzzle. The show's self-aware humor and frequent breaking of the fourth wall might be characters occasionally becoming conscious of their true nature as beings in a constructed reality. When characters acknowledge that they're in a television show, they might be experiencing moments of cosmic awareness where they perceive the true nature of their existence. This brings us to perhaps the most mind-bending aspect of Family Guy's hidden lore. The show might be depicting the gradual awakening of its characters to their true nature as multidimensional beings trapped in a television narrative. Each season, the characters become slightly more aware of the absurdity of their situations and the arbitrary nature of the rules governing their reality. Stewie's evolution from would-be world conqueror to time-traveling adventurer represents his growing understanding of his cosmic nature. Brian's increasing cynicism and existential crises reflect his awareness that he's trapped between worlds. Peter's adventures become more outlandish because he's unconsciously pushing against the boundaries of his reality. Lois's hidden depths suggest she's always been aware of the truth, but has been protecting her family from it. The true horror and beauty of Family Guy's lore lies in this gradual revelation that nothing is as it seems. What appears to be random comedy is actually a complex meditation on the nature of reality, identity, and consciousness. The Griffin family's bizarre adventures are their unconscious attempts to break free from the limitations of their constructed world and discover their true nature as cosmic entities playing out an eternal story across infinite dimensions. So the next time you watch Family Guy, pay attention to the details that seem like throwaway gags. Notice how death has no permanent meaning, how reality bends around the characters, how they sometimes seem aware of forces beyond their comprehension. You're not just watching a comedy show, You're witnessing the gradual awakening of beings who are slowly discovering that they exist in a reality far stranger and more wonderful than they ever imagined. This is the true lore of Family Guy. Hidden beneath layers of crude humor and random cutaways, a story about consciousness trying to understand itself across multiple realities and infinite possibilities. Sweet dreams. Have you ever found yourself scrolling through YouTube at 2 a.m. looking for something to help you drift off to sleep, only to stumble upon a 40-minute video about the hidden connections between Family Guy episodes? Well, you're not alone, and today we're diving deep into the surprisingly intricate world of Family Guy lore that has somehow become the internet's favorite bedtime story. From the mysterious timeline inconsistencies that have puzzled fans for decades, to the dark theories that lurk beneath Seth MacFarlane's seemingly random humor, we're about to explore why this animated sitcom has developed one of the most dedicated and analytical fan bases in television history. Picture this. It's Sunday night, you've got work tomorrow, but instead of getting some rest, you find yourself 3 hours into a rabbit hole about whether Stewie Griffin can actually time travel or if it's all in his imagination. Sound familiar? The phenomenon of Family Guy lore videos has taken over late-night YouTube, creating an entire subgenre of content that combines nostalgic comfort with mind-bending analysis. These aren't just random observations either. We're talking about carefully crafted theories that connect episodes from different seasons, analyze character development arcs that span decades, and uncover Easter eggs that the writers probably forgot they even included. Let's start with the foundation of Family Guy lore, the Griffin family timeline. Now, you might think that a show about a talking baby and a dog with a novel would be pretty straightforward, but you'd be wrong. The series has been on the air since 1999, with that infamous cancellation and resurrection period, and during that time, the characters have somehow managed to travel through time, and exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Peter Griffin has held dozens of jobs, died multiple times, and somehow always returns to his position at the brewery as if nothing happened. This isn't lazy writing. It's actually part of a larger narrative structure that treats continuity more like a suggestion than a rule. The real complexity begins when you start tracking the relationships between characters across seasons. Take Cleveland Brown, for example. He starts as Peter's neighbor and best friend, moves away to star in his own spin-off show, then returns as if nothing happened. But here's where it gets interesting. Eagle-eyed fans have noticed subtle changes in his personality and relationships that suggest the Cleveland who returned isn't quite the same person who left. This has led to theories about parallel dimensions, simulation theory, and even the possibility that the entire series takes place in some kind of purgatory where characters are doomed to repeat similar scenarios with slight variations. Speaking of characters who've changed, let's talk about Brian Griffin, arguably the most complex character in the Family Guy universe. Brian started as the voice of reason, the intellectual counterpoint to the family's chaos. But over the seasons, he's evolved into something much darker and more complicated. He's struggled with alcoholism, had relationships with human women that border on the inappropriate, and occasionally displays knowledge and abilities that seem impossible for a dog. Some fans theorize that Brian isn't actually a dog at all, but rather a human who's been transformed or cursed, which would explain his human-level intelligence, his ability to drive, and his complex emotional relationships. The Stewie Griffin timeline represents perhaps the most intricate piece of Family Guy lore. Early seasons presented Stewie as an evil genius baby bent on world domination and matricide. His sophisticated vocabulary, advanced inventions, and time travel capabilities made him seem almost supernatural. However, as the series progressed, these elements became more subdued, leading to the popular theory that we're watching Stewie's intelligence and abilities fade as he becomes a more typical child. This regression theory suggests that baby genius abilities are temporary and that Stewie is slowly becoming a normal kid, which explains why his elaborate schemes become less frequent and his vocabulary becomes more age-appropriate. But here's where things get really interesting. The time travel episodes. Stewie's time machine has been used multiple times throughout the series, creating alternate timelines and paradoxes that have never been fully resolved. In some episodes, characters retain memories of time travel adventures, while in others, they seem to forget entirely. This inconsistency isn't accidental. It's actually evidence of a multiverse theory that suggests every major character change or continuity error is actually evidence of timeline splits and reality alterations. The show's approach to death and resurrection adds another layer to the lore. Characters die and come back to life regularly, sometimes within the same episode, sometimes across seasons. Peter has been crushed, exploded, and dismembered, only to appear perfectly fine in the next scene. Brian was famously killed off and replaced, only to be brought back through time travel. These deaths aren't treated as permanent consequences, but rather as temporary inconveniences, suggesting that the Family Guy universe operates under different rules than our reality. Let's delve into the recurring background characters who form the backbone of Quahog society. Characters like Herbert, the elderly neighbor, the greased-up deaf guy, and the various news anchors create a sense of continuity that makes Quahog feel like a real place with its own culture and history. These characters often appear in the background of unrelated scenes, creating a web of interconnected stories that reward observant viewers. Some fans have mapped out the social connections between these background characters, creating elaborate family trees and relationship charts that rival those of epic fantasy novels. The show's treatment of pop culture references creates another fascinating aspect of its lore. Family Guy is famous for its cutaway gags that reference everything from 1,980 seconds movies to obscure historical events. But these references aren't random. They often connect to overarching themes and character development. Peter's obsession with 1,980 seconds culture reflects his refusal to grow up and accept adult responsibilities. Stewie's references to Broadway musicals and classic literature hint at his sophisticated nature and possibly his future sexuality. These cultural touchstones create a shared language that binds the characters together while also dating the episodes in specific time periods. The geography of Quahog itself tells a story. The town layout has changed dramatically over the years, with new businesses appearing and disappearing, neighborhoods shifting, and landmarks moving around. This geographic inconsistency has led some fans to theorize that Quahog exists in a state of constant flux, possibly as a reflection of the characters' unstable mental states, or as evidence that the entire series takes place in some kind of dream or simulation. Religious and philosophical themes run deeper through Family Guy than most casual viewers realize. Peter's Catholic upbringing clashes with his hedonistic lifestyle, creating internal conflicts that occasionally surface in episodes dealing with morality and consequences. Lois's Protestant background and her complex relationship with her wealthy parents add layers of class and religious commentary that inform her character development. These spiritual elements aren't always played for laughs. They sometimes provide genuine insight into the character's motivations and fears. The show's handling of mental health issues, while often controversial, creates another dimension of character analysis. Peter's impulsive behavior and lack of consequences could be seen as symptoms of various psychological conditions. Meg's depression and social isolation are treated both as punchlines and as genuine character traits that affect her relationships and life choices. Chris's awkwardness and social difficulties hint at developmental issues that are never directly addressed, but inform his character arc. Family Guy's relationship with its own cancellation and resurrection has become part of its mythology. The show was canceled after 3 seasons, then brought back due to strong DVD sales and Adult Swim reruns. This real-world history has been incorporated into the show's narrative, with characters occasionally breaking the fourth wall to reference their own cancellation. This metatextual approach creates a unique relationship between the show and its audience, acknowledging that both the characters and viewers are aware they're participating in a constructed narrative. The evolution of the show's animation style tells its own story. Early seasons featured simpler character designs and more limited animation, while later seasons showcase increasingly sophisticated visual techniques and more detailed character expressions. This technical progression mirrors the character's emotional development and the show's growing complexity. Fans have created detailed comparisons showing how character designs have evolved, often using these changes to support theories about character development and timeline alterations. The voice acting performances add another layer of lore analysis. Seth MacFarlane voices multiple main characters, and subtle changes in his vocal performances over the years have been interpreted as character development cues. Peter's voice has become more exaggerated and childish, supporting theories about his regression into immaturity. Stewie's voice has become less posh and more typical for his age, reinforcing the theory that his genius is fading. Guest appearances and celebrity references create a complex web of real-world connections that blur the line between fiction and reality. When real celebrities appear as themselves, they often interact with the characters in ways that suggest the Family Guy universe exists parallel to our own, with similar historical events and cultural touchstones, but different rules and consequences. The show's treatment of social and political issues has evolved significantly over its run, reflecting changing attitudes and sensibilities. Early episodes featured edgier humor and more controversial content, while recent seasons have shown more awareness of social responsibility. This evolution isn't just about changing times. It reflects character growth and maturity, particularly in how the family members relate to each other and their community. As we drift off to sleep thinking about these interconnected stories and hidden meanings, it becomes clear why Family Guy lore has become such a popular bedtime topic. The show's seemingly chaotic structure actually contains layers of complexity that reward deep analysis and careful attention. Whether you're falling asleep to theories about Stewie's true nature, pondering the implications of Brian's human relationships, or trying to map out the Quahog timeline, Family Guy offers an unexpectedly rich universe that continues to surprise and engage viewers even after decades on the air. Sweet dreams, and remember, in the world of Family Guy, nothing is ever quite as simple as it first appears. What if I told you that the seemingly random chaos of Family Guy actually contains one of the most intricate and bizarre mythologies in television history? Tonight, we're diving deep into the strange, wonderful, and oddly comforting world of Family Griffin lore that will transport you to Quahog and beyond. Picture this. You're settling in for the night, your mind racing with the day's stresses, when suddenly you remember that Family Guy isn't just a collection of cutaway gags and pop culture references. It's actually a surprisingly rich tapestry of interconnected stories, recurring characters, and hidden depths that have been building for over 2 decades. And tonight, we're going to explore every corner of this animated universe in a way that's perfect for drifting off to sleep. Let's start our journey in the town of Quahog, Rhode Island, a place that exists in its own pocket dimension, where the laws of physics are more like gentle suggestions, and where a talking dog can have a Harvard education, while his owner struggles to remember his own name. Quahog isn't just any fictional town. It's a carefully constructed world, with its own history, geography, and cast of hundreds of recurring characters who each have their own stories to tell. The Griffin family home at 31 Spooner Street serves as our anchor point in this universe. This house has witnessed more supernatural events, time travel incidents, and reality-bending situations than most interdimensional portals. The basement alone has served as everything from a torture chamber to a speakeasy to a portal to different timelines. Each room in this house carries the weight of countless adventures, and if these walls could talk, they'd probably have their own spin-off series. Peter Griffin himself represents something fascinating in the realm of animated characters. He's not just a bumbling father figure, he's a force of nature who somehow manages to survive situations that would destroy lesser mortals. His job, history reads like a fever dream. Brewery worker, fisherman, Renaissance fair knight, bodyguard, paparazzi photographer, and even, briefly, the Pope. Each career change isn't just a throwaway gag, but adds another layer to the mythology of a man who seems to exist outside the normal rules of consequence and reality. The relationship between Peter and his nemesis Giant Chicken, whose real name is Ernie, represents one of television's greatest ongoing feuds. Their battles have destroyed significant portions of Quahog multiple times, yet somehow the town always rebuilds, often in slightly different configurations. These fights aren't just slapstick comedy. They're epic confrontations that span years of real-time storytelling, with each encounter escalating in scope and destruction. The chicken fights serve as a perfect metaphor for the cyclical nature of conflict and resolution, playing out across seasons like a modern-day mythological struggle between order and chaos. Stewie Griffin occupies a unique position in this universe as perhaps the most complex character in animated television. His journey from would-be matricidal infant to time-traveling genius to exploring his own identity represents character development that most live-action dramas would envy. Stewie's inventions have literally reshaped reality multiple times, from his time machine that creates alternate timelines, to his weather control device, to his teleportation technology. He's essentially a godlike being trapped in the body of a 1-year-old, which creates an inherent tension that drives many of the show's most interesting storylines. The relationship between Stewie and Brian forms the emotional core of much of Family Guy's deeper mythology. Brian, the talking dog with a bachelor's degree from Brown University, serves as both Stewie's best friend and his philosophical sparring partner. Their adventures together have taken them through time, across dimensions, and into the deepest corners of human and canine experience. Brian's struggles with alcoholism, his failed writing career, and his complex romantic relationships provide grounding for a show that otherwise revels in absurdity. The time travel episodes alone could fill an entire doctoral thesis. The show has established multiple timeline theories, from the straightforward cause and effect changes we see when Stewie prevents his own conception to the more complex multiverse implications of episodes where multiple versions of characters interact. The time travel mythology suggests that every possible version of events exists simultaneously, which explains how characters can die and return, how major life changes can be undone, and how the show can maintain its status quo despite earth-shattering events. Cleveland Brown's departure and return to the series represents something unique in television, a character who literally moved to their own show and then came back, bringing with him the experiences and relationships from that separate universe. This creates a fascinating metatextual layer where the mythology of Family Guy expands to include the mythology of The Cleveland Show, creating an interconnected animated universe that predates many of the cinematic universes we see today. The recurring characters of Quahog each contribute their own threads to this elaborate tapestry. Glenn Quagmire isn't just the perverted neighbor. He's a complex character with his own tragic backstory, his career as a pilot that's taken him around the world, and his complicated relationships with his family members. His house has been the setting for numerous adventures and reveals, and his interactions with the Griffin family have evolved from simple antagonism to a more nuanced dynamic over the years. Joe Swanson represents resilience and determination in a universe that often seems cruel and arbitrary. His backstory as a police officer paralyzed in the line of duty provides weight to his character that goes beyond his role as comic relief. The episodes exploring his relationship with his wife Bonnie and their son Kevin add layers of domestic drama that ground the more outlandish elements of the show. Joe's adventures, from his time as an undercover cop to his brief stint as a superhero, show that even in a world of talking dogs and time machines, human courage and determination still matter. The mythology extends beyond Quahog to include locations like the Drunken Clam, which serves as more than just a bar. It's a sanctuary where the male characters can explore their friendships and fears away from their domestic responsibilities. The bar has witnessed confessions, celebrations, and confrontations that have shaped the relationships between the core characters. Even seemingly minor locations like the grocery store or the church have their own histories and recurring storylines that add depth to the world. The show's approach to celebrity culture creates its own mythology within the mythology. The numerous celebrity appearances aren't just random cameos. They often serve specific narrative functions and become part of the show's internal logic. When celebrities appear as themselves in Quahog, they enter a world where the normal rules don't apply, leading to interactions that are both surreal and surprisingly meaningful. These episodes often explore themes of fame, authenticity, and the price of celebrity in ways that are both hilarious and oddly poignant. The holiday episodes of Family Guy deserve special mention in any discussion of the show's mythology. Christmas episodes don't just repeat the same themes, they build on each other, creating an ongoing narrative about family, tradition, and the meaning of celebration in a chaotic world. The Halloween episodes explore different aspects of horror and the supernatural, often revealing hidden depths to characters we think we know completely. These seasonal episodes serve as anchor points in the show's timeline, providing structure to what might otherwise seem like random storytelling. The show's relationship with death is particularly fascinating from a mythological perspective. Characters die and return regularly, but these deaths aren't meaningless. They serve specific narrative purposes and often lead to character growth or revelation. When Brian died temporarily, the impact rippled through the entire cast and fanbase, demonstrating how deeply these characters have embedded themselves in our collective consciousness. The fact that death isn't permanent in this universe doesn't make it less meaningful. It makes it a tool for exploring different aspects of loss, grief, and redemption. The musical episodes and sequences throughout the series create their own subset of mythology. From Stewie's elaborate musical numbers to Peter's various band formations, music serves as a way for characters to express emotions and ideas that might otherwise be difficult to convey. These musical moments often reveal hidden talents and desires, adding new dimensions to familiar characters. The songs themselves become part of the show's cultural impact, living on beyond their original episodes. The show's exploration of alternate versions of characters provides fascinating glimpses into different possibilities within the Family Guy universe. Evil versions, successful versions, and radically different versions of familiar characters show us that the people we know are just one possible outcome of countless variables. This multiverse approach allows the show to explore different aspects of personality and relationships while maintaining the core dynamics that make the show work. The animal characters beyond Brian add their own elements to the mythology. From Vinny, the dog who temporarily replaced Brian, to the various pets and creatures that have appeared throughout the series, each brings their own perspective on the human condition. These characters often serve as voices of reason or chaos, depending on what the story requires, and their interactions with the main cast reveal different aspects of the characters' personalities. The show's approach to education and intelligence creates interesting contradictions that add depth to the mythology. While Peter is often portrayed as unintelligent, he occasionally displays surprising knowledge or skills that suggest hidden depths. Lois's background in music and her various adventures show that she's much more than just a patient wife and mother. These moments of unexpected competence or knowledge add layers to characters that might otherwise seem one-dimensional. The recurring gags and references throughout the series create their own mythology of inside jokes and shared experiences. The chicken fights, the various ways characters fall and hurt their knees, and the countless cutaway gags all contribute to a shared language that longtime viewers understand implicitly. These elements create a sense of community among fans and add richness to the viewing experience that rewards attention and memory. The show's treatment of technology and progress reflects our own changing relationship with innovation and change. From Stewie's advanced inventions to the family's struggles with new gadgets and social media, Family Guy chronicles our collective journey through the digital age. The technology in the show often serves as a catalyst for character development or plot advancement, showing how tools and toys can reveal hidden aspects of personality and relationships. As we reach the end of our journey through Family Guy's hidden mythology, it becomes clear that this seemingly simple cartoon has created something much more complex and enduring than its surface-level humor might suggest. The world of Quahog and its inhabitants represents a unique achievement in animated storytelling. See, a universe where anything can happen, but where the core relationships and emotions remain recognizably human. The comfort we find in Family Guy's chaos comes from its consistency within inconsistency. While the plots may be unpredictable and the situations absurd, the characters remain true to their essential natures, creating a reliable foundation beneath all the mayhem. This balance between surprise and familiarity makes it perfect viewing for those moments when we need something engaging enough to occupy our minds, but comfortable enough to help us relax. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, let your mind wander through the streets of Quahog, where talking dogs debate philosophy, babies build time machines, and ordinary families navigate extraordinary circumstances with humor and heart. In this world where anything is possible, perhaps the most magical thing of all is that love and friendship somehow manage to survive and thrive despite all the chaos surrounding them. Sweet dreams. And remember, in the world of Family Guy, tomorrow always brings new adventures, new laughs, and new reasons to appreciate the beautifully bizarre journey of life itself. Have you ever fallen asleep to the chaotic sounds of Peter Griffin crashing through a wall or Stewie plotting world domination? Tonight we're diving deep into the bizarre, twisted, and surprisingly intricate world of Family Guy lore that's somehow become the perfect background noise for millions of viewers worldwide. From the hidden connections between episodes that span decades to the dark secrets lurking beneath Quahog's surface, this is your ultimate guide to the Family Guy universe that will either help you drift off to dreamland or keep you wide awake, questioning everything you thought you knew about America's most dysfunctional animated family. Family Guy has been on our screens for over 2 decades now, and what started as a simple animated sitcom has evolved into something far more complex and layered than most people realize. Tonight we're going to explore the deep lore, the recurring mysteries, the character backstories that only dedicated fans know about, and all the subtle details that make this show a fascinating rabbit hole to fall down as you're trying to fall asleep. Let's start with the Griffin family themselves, because there's so much more to these characters than meets the eye. Peter Griffin isn't just a bumbling father figure. His backstory reveals a man shaped by abandonment, neglect, and a desperate need for acceptance that manifests in increasingly destructive ways. We learn throughout the series that Peter was adopted, never knowing his real father until much later in the show's run. This abandonment issue explains so much about his behavior, his need to be the center of attention, and his often childlike approach to solving problems. But here's where it gets interesting for our sleepy exploration. Peter's job history reads like a fever dream. He's worked at a toy factory, been a fisherman, worked at a brewery, become a bodyguard, tried his hand at being a country music star, worked as a private investigator, and somehow ended up back at the brewery multiple times. Each job change represents a different phase of the show's evolution, and if you're watching chronologically as you fall asleep, you can actually track the show's tonal shifts through Peter's career moves. Lois Griffin presents an even more fascinating character study for our nighttime viewing. She comes from the wealthy Pewterschmidt family, which immediately sets up this class conflict that runs throughout the entire series. Her father, Carter Pewterschmidt, represents old money, conservative values, and everything that Peter both despises and desperately wants to be accepted by. Lois chose Peter over her privileged background, but this choice haunts their relationship in subtle ways that become more apparent when you're watching with sleepy, unfocused attention. The really interesting lore element here is how Lois's musical background keeps surfacing throughout the series. She's classically trained, she's performed professionally, and there are hints that she gave up a potentially successful career to become a housewife and mother. These musical moments in the show often serve as brief respites from the chaos, making them perfect for viewers who are using the show to wind down. Now let's talk about Meg, because her character arc is actually one of the most complex and disturbing elements of the Family Guy universe. What starts as typical teenage awkwardness evolves into something much darker. The family's treatment of Meg goes beyond normal sibling rivalry or parental frustration. It becomes a systematic emotional abuse that the show initially played for laughs, but gradually reveals as genuinely harmful. The lore around Meg includes several episodes that suggest she's actually the most mentally stable and capable member of the family, which makes her treatment even more tragic. She's shown to be intelligent, talented, and capable of genuine empathy, qualities that the rest of the family either ignores or actively punishes. For viewers drifting off to sleep, Meg's storylines often provide a strange sort of comfort because they're usually quieter and more introspective than the main family chaos. Chris Griffin's character development follows a different trajectory entirely. While he's often dismissed as the dumb kid, the show's lore reveals that Chris has artistic talent, musical ability, and emotional intelligence that surpasses most of his family members. His relationship with his father is complicated by Peter's own insecurities about masculinity and success. Chris represents the possibility of breaking the cycle of dysfunction, which gives his character an underlying hopefulness that works well for bedtime viewing. But let's dive into the real star of Family Guy's complex lore, Stewie Griffin. This character has undergone one of the most dramatic evolutionary arcs in television history. He started as a genuinely evil baby bent on world domination and matricide, but gradually transformed into a complex character dealing with identity, sexuality, and belonging. The show never explicitly addresses this transformation, which creates this fascinating ambiguity about whether Stewie actually changed or whether we're just seeing different aspects of his personality. The time travel episodes featuring Stewie create some of the most intricate lore in the entire series. His future selves, his various timelines, and his technological capabilities suggest a level of intelligence and capability that extends far beyond what we see in regular episodes. These time travel storylines often involve quieter, more contemplative moments that are perfect for viewers who are trying to relax. Stewie's relationship with Brian creates another layer of lore that's perfect for our sleepy exploration. Their friendship transcends the typical pet-owner relationship and becomes something closer to intellectual partnership. They travel together, solve problems together, and engage in philosophical discussions that often serve as the show's more thoughtful moments. Their dynamic provides a consistent emotional anchor throughout the series' more chaotic elements. Speaking of Brian, his character lore is incredibly rich and often overlooked. He's not just a talking dog. He's a failed writer, a recovering alcoholic, a liberal intellectual, and someone struggling with depression and self-worth issues. His various romantic relationships throughout the series reveal someone desperately seeking validation and connection. His death and resurrection in later seasons created one of the most emotionally impactful storylines in the show's history, demonstrating how attached viewers had become to his character. The setting of Quahog itself deserves exploration in our lore deep dive. This fictional Rhode Island town has its own mythology, complete with local celebrities, recurring businesses, and a distinct culture. The Drunken Clam serves as a central gathering place where much of the show's male bonding and philosophical discussions occur. Mort Goldman's pharmacy, the local news station, and various other businesses create a sense of continuity and community that grounds the more absurd elements of the show. Cleveland's departure and return to the series creates interesting lore implications. His time in Virginia with his own spin-off show exists in the same universe, and references to his experiences there occasionally surface in Family Guy episodes. This interconnected universe concept adds depth for viewers who are familiar with both shows. Quagmire's character provides some of the darkest lore in the entire series. While often played for laughs, his behavior patterns suggest serious psychological issues and criminal tendencies. The show occasionally hints at a more complex backstory involving his father's gender transition, his military service, and his dysfunctional relationship patterns. These darker elements create an interesting contrast with his seemingly cheerful demeanor. Joe Swanson's backstory as a disabled police officer adds another layer of complexity to the Quahog community. His accident, his marriage to Bonnie, and his struggle to maintain his sense of purpose and masculinity after becoming paralyzed provide some of the show's more serious emotional content. His friendship with Peter, Cleveland, and Quagmire often explores themes of loyalty, acceptance, and adaptation that work well for contemplative viewing. The show's cutaway gags, while seemingly random, actually create their own form of lore through recurring characters and situations. Conway Twitty appearances, the various historical figures Peter claims to have interacted with, and the recurring joke characters all contribute to the show's internal mythology. These cutaways often provide brief mental breaks that can be soothing for viewers trying to wind down. Family Guy's approach to continuity is deliberately loose, which actually makes it perfect for casual viewing. Unlike serialized dramas that require intense attention to plot details, Family Guy episodes can be enjoyed independently while still rewarding longtime viewers with references and callbacks. This makes it ideal for background viewing or for times when you're not paying complete attention. The show's musical numbers deserve special mention in our lore exploration. From Conway Twitty performances to elaborate Broadway-style productions, these musical interludes often serve as the show's most memorable and emotionally resonant moments. They break up the rapid-fire joke delivery and provide opportunities for character development and emotional expression. The various holiday episodes throughout the series create their own seasonal lore. Christmas episodes often explore themes of family, tradition, and redemption. Halloween episodes venture into horror and supernatural territory. These special episodes often feature higher production values and more elaborate storytelling that reward dedicated viewing. The show's treatment of religion, politics, and social issues creates ongoing lore threads that reflect changing social attitudes over the show's long run. Early episodes approach these topics differently than later ones, creating an interesting timeline of cultural evolution that can be tracked through the series' progression. Guest appearances and celebrity encounters in Family Guy often become part of the show's lore through recurring references and callbacks. These celebrity interactions sometimes extend beyond single episodes, creating ongoing relationships and references that reward longtime viewers. The various alternate reality and parallel universe episodes explore different versions of the Griffin family and Quahog community. These episodes often reveal character depths and relationship dynamics that aren't apparent in regular episodes. They also provide opportunities to explore what-if scenarios that add complexity to our understanding of the main characters. Family Guy's animation style evolution tells its own story about the show's development and budget changes over time. Early episodes have a distinctly different look and feel compared to more recent ones. This visual evolution creates a subtle timeline that longtime viewers can use to place episodes chronologically, even without checking air dates. The show's relationship with Fox Network, including its cancellation and resurrection, becomes part of its own metalore. Episodes that reference these real-world events blur the line between fiction and reality in ways that add extra layers for dedicated fans to discover and contemplate. As we wind down our exploration of Family Guy's rich lore landscape, it's worth noting that this depth and complexity is part of what makes the show so suitable for repeated viewing and background watching. There's always another layer to discover, another connection to make, another character detail to notice. Whether you're actively watching or letting it play, while you drift off to sleep, Family Guy's universe provides a consistent, familiar, and surprisingly deep world to explore. The beauty of Family Guy lore for bedtime viewing lies in its perfect balance of familiarity and discovery. You can watch episodes you've seen dozens of times and still notice new details, catch references you missed before, or simply let the familiar voices and situations wash over you as you relax. The show's episodic nature means you won't lose important plot threads if you fall asleep mid-episode, but its rich lore rewards those moments when you find yourself unexpectedly engaged and alert. Sweet dreams. And remember that somewhere in Quahog, Peter Griffin is probably about to do something that will somehow make perfect sense within the wonderfully chaotic universe that has been entertaining us for over 2 decades. Hey there, night owls and Family Guy fanatics. If you're settling in for some late-night entertainment and your brain is ready to drift off into dreamland, I've got the perfect collection of wild Family Guy facts that'll either help you doze off peacefully or keep you wide awake wondering how this show even exists. Tonight, we're diving deep into the bizarre, chaotic, and absolutely insane world of everyone's favorite dysfunctional animated family. Let me start with something that'll blow your mind right off the bat. Did you know that Peter Griffin has an astronomical body count that would make serial killers jealous? We're talking thousands of deaths, and honestly, most of them happened in the most ridiculous ways possible. This isn't your typical cartoon violence where characters bounce back with cartoon physics. Peter has legitimately caused more destruction than some natural disasters. Speaking of Peter's mayhem, his very first kill happened way back in the 2nd episode of the entire series. Remember that Roadrunner from Looney Tunes? Yeah, Peter straight up ran that bird down with his car, flattening it completely. What makes this even funnier is Peter's reaction afterward, casually asking if he hit an ostrich while the Roadrunner is clearly pancaked on his windshield. This moment basically set the tone for everything that would follow in the series. But here's where things get really wild. Peter once literally took over Death's job in the show, and with that cosmic responsibility came the power to kill people just by touching them. During his stint as the Grim Reaper, he accidentally killed 2 airplane pilots mid-flight simply because he forgot to wear mittens. Can you imagine being a passenger on that plane? Thankfully, actress Karen Black was somehow there to land the aircraft, or everyone would have died in that crash too. The hospital incidents are particularly disturbing when you think about them. Peter somehow convinced people to let him work as a doctor, which is terrifying enough on its own, but then he actually killed a patient during what should have been a routine procedure. The patient even thanked Peter for saving his life right before dying, which adds this darkly comedic layer that only Family Guy could pull off. Here's a fact that might help you sleep better or give you nightmares, depending on your perspective. Peter once worked as a babysitter and literally left a baby to drown in a bathtub. He casually walked away, leaving behind drain cleaner in case of clogs, soap next to a radio, and towels on the roof. The complete negligence and absurdity of this situation perfectly captures Peter's character. He's simultaneously well-meaning and catastrophically incompetent. The show took Peter's violence to cinematic levels during various parody episodes. When they did their Kill Bill homage, Peter went full samurai warrior mode, engaging in what can only be described as a sword-fighting bloodbath. The choreography was surprisingly well animated for a show that usually relies on simple character movements, and Peter managed to take down 15 opponents all by himself in pure martial arts mayhem. Then there's Peter's brief career as a superhero parody called Red Stool, which was obviously their take on Deadpool. The name comes from the fact that his cancer specifically affected his rear end, because of course Family Guy would go there. As Red Stool, Peter maintained Deadpool's tendency for extreme violence, adding several more bodies to his ever-growing count while cracking inappropriate jokes the entire time. The Walter White parody deserves special mention because it perfectly captured the essence of Breaking Bad while maintaining Family Guy's signature chaos. Peter as Heisenberg was just as dangerous as the original, dropping bodies left and right while somehow making it comedically absurd rather than genuinely threatening. The transformation from bumbling father to calculating criminal mastermind was surprisingly well executed for a show known more for cutaway gags than character development. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Peter's violence is how it affects his own family. He once accidentally killed his entire family through carbon monoxide poisoning, and his reaction was essentially wondering if his day's work was worth it. Sure, they all came back in the next episode because cartoon logic, but the casual way Peter processes causing his loved ones' deaths is genuinely unsettling when you think about it too deeply. The fight scenes with Ernie the Giant Chicken are legendary among Family Guy fans, and for good reason. These battles have spanned multiple episodes and caused more collateral damage than most action movies. They've fought in airports, construction sites, moving trains, and even hijacked time machines to battle across different historical periods. The destruction they cause is absolutely massive, with buildings collapsing, vehicles exploding, and innocent bystanders getting caught in their ridiculous feud. What makes the chicken fights even more absurd is that they started over an expired coupon. Think about that for a moment. These two characters have caused thousands of deaths, millions of dollars in property damage, and untold chaos across multiple dimensions, all because of a disagreement about a coupon's validity. It's the perfect example of Family Guy's ability to take tiny conflicts and escalate them to world-ending proportions. The time travel elements in their fights add another layer of complexity and destruction. When Peter and Ernie crash through different time periods, they're not just affecting the present day, they're literally altering history itself. The poor driver of that futuristic train they destroyed was probably just trying to get to work in his cyberpunk timeline. And suddenly, he's vaporized because two idiots from the early 21st century decided to continue their grocery store dispute across the space-time continuum. Here's something that might surprise you. Peter has actually caused more deaths through his various acts of terrorism, albeit usually accidental ones. When he befriended a terrorist named Mahmoud, Peter was completely oblivious to what was happening. All he cared about was the attention and perks of his new friendship. When Mahmoud gave him what Peter thought was a phone, he kept trying to use it to make calls, not realizing it was actually a bomb detonator. The explosions that resulted from Peter's innocent phone calls were catastrophic. Each time he tried to dial Mahmoud, another building would explode somewhere in the city. The fact that Peter remained completely clueless about what was happening makes it both hilarious and terrifying. Even when the gang managed to stop Mahmoud's planned attack on a bridge, Peter still had that detonator and used it again while trying to call a restaurant for reservations. The crossover episode with The Simpsons showcased Peter's destructive capabilities on an even grander scale. His fight with Homer Simpson leveled entire city blocks and resulted in mass casualties that would normally be associated with natural disasters or military conflicts. The two fathers' brawl started over Peter insulting The Simpsons show, which escalated into a city-destroying conflict that somehow ended with both characters gaining superpowers from radioactive waste. One particularly disturbing sequence involved Peter's brief stint as a high school student where he arranged for a school shooting to get revenge on popular kids who ignored him. Even though he called it off at the last minute, the attack still went through, and the screams and gunshots in the background suggest multiple casualties among innocent children. This episode aired during a time when such events were unfortunately becoming more common in real life, making Peter's involvement even more unsettling. Peter's various explosions of hospitals deserve special mention for their sheer scale of destruction. When he disagreed with vaccines, he dressed as the Joker and blew up an entire medical facility just to prevent Stewie from getting a shot. The explosion was massive enough to level the building and likely killed dozens of patients, doctors, nurses, and staff members who were just trying to provide health care. But he didn't stop there. Peter later destroyed a children's hospital in another equally senseless act of destruction. The casual way the show presents these incidents, with Peter treating the explosions like minor inconveniences rather than mass casualty events, perfectly captures the dark comedy that Family Guy specializes in. It's simultaneously hilarious and deeply disturbing. The missile incidents showcase Peter's ability to cause destruction on a military scale. During his fight with President Trump, Peter's head got slammed onto a big red button that launched multiple missiles. Each missile likely killed hundreds of people in massive explosions, turning what started as a personal dispute into an international incident with catastrophic consequences. What's particularly interesting about Peter's character is how the show manages to make him sympathetic despite his astronomical body count. He's never intentionally malicious. He's just incredibly stupid and impulsive with access to dangerous situations. This combination makes him simultaneously lovable and terrifying, which is probably why the character has remained popular for over 2 decades. The physics of Peter's destruction often defy logic, even by cartoon standards. When he and Ernie crashed that Ferris wheel, it rolled through the city like a massive wheel of death, flattening everything in its path. The scale of destruction was apocalyptic, but it was presented with such absurd cartoon logic that viewers could laugh at it rather than being horrified by the implications. Peter's various career changes always seem to result in multiple casualties. Whether he's working as a doctor, babysitter, death himself, or any other profession, people end up dying as a direct result of his incompetence. It's actually impressive how consistently dangerous he is across all walks of life. There's literally no job safe enough for Peter Griffin to perform without causing fatalities. The show's commitment to continuity regarding Peter's violence is surprisingly strong for a series that usually ignores consequences. Characters who die in one episode rarely come back, unless there's a specific plot reason, and the destruction Peter causes often gets referenced in later episodes. This attention to detail makes his actions feel more impactful than typical cartoon violence. Here's a fun sleeping fact. The total estimated death toll directly caused by Peter Griffin throughout the series is approaching 3,000 people. That number includes direct kills, collateral damage from his fights, explosions he's caused, and various accidents resulting from his stupidity. To put that in perspective, Peter has personally caused more deaths than many historical disasters. The international incidents Peter has triggered would realistically make him one of the most wanted criminals on the planet. He's blown up bridges, destroyed government buildings, launched military missiles, and caused diplomatic crises with multiple countries. Yet somehow he continues living his normal suburban life without any legal consequences, which is perhaps the most unrealistic aspect of a show featuring a talking baby and a martini-drinking dog. As you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that somewhere in the Family Guy universe, Peter Griffin is probably causing another catastrophe that will add to his ever-growing body count. Sweet dreams, and maybe avoid any neighborhoods where middle-aged men are having disputes with large poultry. In the world of Family Guy, such conflicts have a tendency to escalate into city-leveling disasters that make natural catastrophes look like minor inconveniences. The beautiful absurdity of Peter's character is that despite being responsible for more destruction than most fictional supervillains, he's still somehow the protagonist we're supposed to root for. That's the magic of Family Guy, taking the most inappropriate situations and making them laugh out loud funny through sheer audacity and perfect comedic timing. Now close your eyes and let these wonderfully bizarre facts carry you off into dreamland, where hopefully giant chickens and expired coupons can't hurt you. Picture this. You're lying in bed, ready to drift off, and someone mentions Family Guy facts. Suddenly, your brain lights up like a Christmas tree, and sleep becomes impossible. Well, tonight, we're embracing the chaos with the most bizarre, hilarious, and downright shocking facts about everyone's favorite dysfunctional animated family. So get comfortable, because these Family Guy secrets are about to blow your mind. Let's start with something that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about the show. Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice by Fox. The first time was in 2002 after just 3 seasons. But here's where it gets wild. The show's resurrection had nothing to do with critical acclaim or network executives suddenly realizing their mistake. It was all about DVD sales and late-night reruns on Adult Swim. The fans literally brought this show back from the dead through pure dedication and binge-watching. But that's just the beginning of the madness. Did you know that Seth MacFarlane almost died on September 11, 2001? He was supposed to be on American Airlines Flight 11, the first plane to hit the World Trade Center. The only reason he missed that flight was because he had been out drinking the night before, and his travel agent had given him the wrong departure time. He showed up to the airport hungover and 15 minutes too late. Talk about a sliding doors moment that changed television history forever. Speaking of Seth MacFarlane, this guy is basically a one-man entertainment machine. He doesn't just voice multiple characters on the show. He voices Peter Griffin, Brian the dog, Stewie, Glenn Quagmire, and Carter Pewterschmidt, plus several other recurring characters. That means when Peter and Brian are having a conversation, it's literally just Seth talking to himself in different voices. The recording sessions must be absolutely bonkers. Now, here's a fact that'll mess with your head. The show's signature cutaway gags, those random flashbacks that interrupt the main story, weren't originally part of the plan. They started as a way to fill time when episodes were running short. But they became so popular that they're now considered the show's trademark. Some episodes have been built entirely around these seemingly random interruptions. Let's talk about the characters for a moment, because there are some seriously twisted details hiding beneath the surface. Take Stewie Griffin, the diabolical baby genius. His character was originally inspired by the child character from the British sitcom The Onedin Line, but with a much darker twist. The writers have confirmed that Stewie has an incredibly high body count throughout the series, and we're not talking about toy soldiers here. In various episodes, Stewie has eliminated family members, strangers, celebrities, and even historical figures. There was that time he burned down a playhouse with children inside because he caught his girlfriend cheating. Then there's the episode where he takes out a prostitute with a sniper rifle for absolutely no reason other than target practice. And let's not forget when he dressed up as Santa and traumatized an entire family on Christmas morning, leaving behind what can only be described as a holiday horror scene. But Stewie's kill count gets exponentially more insane when you factor in his partnership with Penelope, his equally psychotic girlfriend. Together, they embarked on a global destruction spree that included bombing the Great Wall of China, destroying the Eiffel Tower, and creating a tidal wave that wiped out Copenhagen. When you add up all the casualties from their international terrorism campaign, we're talking about millions of victims. This baby character has technically committed genocide multiple times. The really disturbing part is how casually the show treats these mass casualty events. They're played for laughs, but when you actually sit down and think about the implications, Stewie, Griffin might be one of the most prolific fictional killers in television history. And he's supposed to be a 1-year-old baby. Moving away from the murder and mayhem, let's dive into some behind-the-scenes secrets that are equally fascinating. The show's animation style has evolved dramatically over the years, but not always in ways you'd expect. The early seasons were animated using traditional cell animation techniques, but the show switched to digital animation in later seasons. However, they deliberately kept certain imperfections in the animation to maintain that slightly rough, hand-drawn aesthetic that fans loved. Here's something that'll surprise you about the voice acting. Several major celebrity guest stars have appeared on the show, but many of them recorded their lines over the phone or via video call. This means some of your favorite celebrity cameos were literally phoned in, quite literally. The production team became masters at making these remote recordings sound like they were recorded in the same studio as the main cast. The show's musical numbers are another hidden gem of complexity. Seth MacFarlane, being a professional singer himself, often performs the songs live with a full orchestra. Those elaborate musical sequences you see in episodes aren't just animated afterthoughts. They're often recorded with full big band arrangements, complete with brass sections and professional backup singers. The amount of production value that goes into a 3-minute cartoon musical number rivals what you'd see in actual Broadway shows. But here's where things get really weird with the show's continuity. Family Guy exists in a universe where almost anything can happen, and the writers take full advantage of this freedom. Characters die and come back to life regularly. The family has traveled through time, met their alternate universe selves, and even broken the fourth wall to acknowledge that they're cartoon characters. This narrative flexibility allows for some truly bizarre storylines that would be impossible in live-action television. One of the most mind-bending aspects of the show is how it handles character development, or rather, how it deliberately avoids it. Unlike most long-running series where characters grow and change over time, Family Guy operates on what's essentially a reset button philosophy. No matter what happens in an episode, everyone goes back to their baseline personalities by the next episode. This means Peter can learn valuable life lessons, die, get married again, become president, or transform into a completely different person, and none of it matters the following week. This approach extends to the show's relationship with its own mythology. Remember when Brian died and was replaced by a new dog named Vinny? The fan outrage was so intense that the writers brought Brian back to life just a few episodes later. But rather than pretend the death never happened, they incorporated the resurrection into the show's time travel mythology. It's this kind of meta-storytelling that keeps fans constantly guessing about what's real and what's just another throwaway gag. The cultural impact of Family Guy extends far beyond just being a popular cartoon. The show has influenced internet meme culture in ways that most people don't even realize. That "oh no" chicken fight scene between Peter and the giant chicken has become a template for depicting extended, over-the-top cartoon violence. The "it insists upon itself" quote about The Godfather has become shorthand for pretentious film criticism. And don't even get me started on how many internet arguments have been settled by simply posting a Family Guy cutaway gag. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the show is how it serves as a time capsule for American pop culture over the past 2 decades. Episodes from the early 2000s are filled with references to celebrities, movies, and cultural phenomena that were huge at the time but have since been forgotten. Watching old episodes is like taking a trip through a museum of pop culture history, complete with all the embarrassing fashion choices and forgotten scandals. The show's approach to controversial topics has always been deliberately provocative. The writers seem to take a perverse pleasure in pushing boundaries and seeing how far they can go before someone complains. But here's the thing that's often overlooked. Beneath all the shock value and offensive humor, the show actually has a surprisingly progressive worldview on many social issues. It just packages that progressivism in such outrageous wrapping that people miss the actual message. Take the character of Brian, the family dog. On the surface, he's just a talking dog who drinks martinis and has pretensions of being an intellectual. But Brian often serves as the show's moral compass, calling out the other characters when they do terrible things. His relationship with the family, particularly with Stewie, represents some of the show's most genuine emotional moments. When Brian temporarily died, the fan reaction wasn't just about losing a funny character. People were genuinely heartbroken because Brian represented the heart of the show. The animation team behind Family Guy has developed some truly innovative techniques over the years. Those elaborate fight scenes, particularly the ones involving Peter and the giant chicken, require months of planning and animation work. The sequences are choreographed like actual action movies, with careful attention paid to pacing, camera angles, and dramatic timing. The fact that all this effort goes into animating a man fighting a poultry mascot is both absurd and oddly impressive. Here's a production secret that most fans don't know. The show's writers often create multiple versions of controversial jokes, starting with the most extreme version and then gradually toning it down until they find something that Fox will actually allow on television. This means, for every outrageous joke that makes it into an episode, there are probably 3 or 4 even more outrageous versions sitting in a file somewhere. The merchandising empire built around Family Guy is absolutely massive. There are Family Guy branded everything from coffee mugs to car accessories to clothing lines. But the most surprising merchandising success has been Stewie Griffin baby products. Yes, parents are apparently comfortable decorating their nurseries with imagery of a homicidal infant genius. The irony is probably lost on most consumers, but it's definitely not lost on the show's creators. One aspect of the show that deserves more recognition is its musical sophistication. Seth MacFarlane's background as a professional musician shows up constantly in the series. The show regularly features complex musical arrangements, sophisticated harmonies, and genre pastiche that demonstrates a deep understanding of American musical traditions. When Family Guy does a musical number, it's not just a cartoon singing a silly song, it's often a legitimate piece of musical entertainment that could stand on its own. The show's relationship with censorship has always been complicated. While Fox allows Family Guy to get away with content that would never fly on network television during prime time, the show still operates under certain restrictions. The writers have become masters at implying things they can't show directly. Sometimes the most shocking moments happen entirely off-screen, letting your imagination fill in the disturbing details. This brings us to one of the most interesting aspects of Family Guy's comedy philosophy. The show doesn't just break the fourth wall occasionally, it demolishes the fourth wall completely and then rebuilds it just so it can break it again. Characters regularly acknowledge that they're in a television show, comment on their own animation style, and even complain about changes in their voice actors. This level of meta humor was revolutionary when the show started, and it's still pushing boundaries today. The international versions of Family Guy are fascinating studies in cultural adaptation. Different countries have had to handle the show's content in wildly different ways. Some countries censor entire episodes, while others rewrite dialogue completely to make cultural references more relevant to local audiences. There are probably versions of Family Guy exist where the characters are having completely different conversations while their mouths move to the original English dialogue. As we wrap up this deep dive into Family Guy's bizarre universe, it's worth reflecting on why these facts are so compelling. There's something oddly comforting about learning the secrets behind a show that's designed to be completely unpredictable. Even when Family Guy is at its most chaotic and nonsensical, there are real people behind the scenes making deliberate, creative choices, putting enormous effort into crafting these moments of animated insanity. The show has managed to maintain its relevance for over 2 decades by constantly evolving while never losing its core identity. It's simultaneously one of the most juvenile shows on television and one of the most sophisticated pieces of pop culture commentary ever created. That contradiction is probably the most Family Guy thing of all. So the next time you're channel surfing and stumble across a Family Guy rerun, remember that you're not just watching a cartoon about a dysfunctional family. You're experiencing a complex piece of entertainment that represents millions of hours of creative work, countless cultural references, and enough behind-the-scenes drama to fill several seasons of reality television. Sweet dreams, and may your Family Guy nightmares be filled with giant chicken fights and Stewie's diabolical laughter echoing through your subconscious. Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone at 2 a.m., when suddenly you realize something terrifying. The wholesome suburban mom from Family Guy might actually be one of television's most dangerous criminals. Tonight, we're diving deep into the bizarre, shocking, and downright unbelievable world of random Family Guy facts that'll keep your mind spinning as you drift off to sleep. Before we jump into this wild ride, let me set the stage. Family Guy has been blessing us with its chaotic humor since 1999. And over those decades, the show has accumulated more strange trivia than a conspiracy theorist's bulletin board. These aren't your typical behind-the-scenes stories about voice actors or animation techniques. No, we're talking about facts so random and unexpected that they'll have you questioning everything you thought you knew about the Griffin family and their twisted little universe. Let's start with something that'll make you see Lois Griffin in a completely different light. Did you know that if we calculated all of Lois's criminal activities throughout the series, she'd be facing multiple life sentences? I'm not talking about minor infractions here. We're discussing murder, drug manufacturing, corruption, kidnapping, and assault charges that would make even the most hardened criminals nervous. The evolution of Lois as a character is absolutely fascinating when you think about it. In the early seasons, she was essentially a generic sitcom mom, playing the straight woman to Peter's antics. But somewhere along the way, the writers decided to transform her into something far more sinister. By the later seasons, Lois had become a full-blown criminal mastermind, hiding behind the facade of suburban motherhood. Take her casual confession to vehicular manslaughter, for instance. During a seemingly innocent family moment, Lois drops the bombshell that she once killed a jaywalker years ago. The way she mentions it so nonchalantly, like she's discussing the weather, suggests this might not even be her only victim. It makes you wonder what other dark secrets are lurking behind that perfectly styled red hair. But murder is just the tip of the iceberg. Lois has also run a methamphetamine operation that would make Walter White jealous. When the Griffin family moves to a farm and discovers an abandoned meth lab in their storm cellar, most normal people would call the police immediately. Not Lois. She sees a business opportunity and jumps in with both feet, becoming a drug queenpin alongside Peter. The fact that she rationalizes this decision by saying their family needs them to sell illegal drugs to the community shows just how twisted her moral compass has become. Speaking of twisted morals, let's talk about the time Lois went through what can only be described as the world's most inappropriate midlife crisis. After Peter makes some insensitive comments about her age at her birthday party, Lois transforms into someone you might find dancing on tables at a club at 3 in the morning. This leads to her attempting to seduce a teenage pop star, which crosses so many legal and ethical boundaries that it's hard to know where to begin. The shoplifting incident is another perfect example of how quickly Lois can spiral out of control. What starts as stealing a single ham from the grocery store escalates into a full-blown crime spree involving fine art and car parts. Her kleptomania becomes so severe that she eventually gets arrested, breaks out of jail, and turns her entire family into fugitives. All because she couldn't resist the thrill of taking something that didn't belong to her. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Lois's criminal behavior is how she treats her own children when things go wrong. When Stewie suffers a serious head injury, instead of rushing him to the hospital like any normal parent would, Lois chooses to cover it up. She and Peter create an elaborate scheme involving makeup and staged accidents to hide their negligence. The fact that she prioritizes avoiding responsibility over her child's well-being reveals a level of selfishness that's genuinely chilling. Now, let's shift gears and talk about some of the more bizarre production facts that most fans don't know. The show's creator, Seth MacFarlane, originally pitched Family Guy as a much darker, more satirical series. Many of the early concepts were considered too controversial, even for late-night television. Some of these rejected ideas eventually found their way into later episodes, but in modified form. The voice acting process for Family Guy is more complex than most people realize. Seth MacFarlane voices multiple main characters, often having full conversations with himself during recording sessions. The technical challenge of maintaining distinct personalities and vocal patterns for each character while switching back and forth rapidly is something that few voice actors could handle. MacFarlane has mentioned in interviews that he sometimes loses track of which character he's supposed to be voicing mid-sentence. The show's animation style, while appearing simple on the surface, actually requires an enormous amount of detail work. Each episode contains hundreds of subtle visual gags and background jokes that most viewers miss entirely. The animators deliberately hide references to other shows, movies, and pop culture phenomena in almost every frame. Some of these hidden jokes are so obscure that they're only discovered by fans years after the episodes originally aired. One of the most interesting aspects of Family Guy's production is how the writers handle the show's timeline. The characters never age, despite the show running for over 2 decades. This creates some fascinating continuity challenges. For example, pop culture references that were current when early episodes were written now seem dated, but the characters still react to them as if they're happening in real time. The writers have to constantly balance staying relevant with maintaining the show's internal consistency. The censorship battles that Family Guy has fought over the years could fill their own documentary series. Network executives have rejected countless jokes, storylines, and visual gags for being too offensive or controversial. What's fascinating is that some of the content that was deemed unacceptable 15 years ago would probably pass without comment today, while other material that aired without issue then would never make it to broadcast now. The shifting standards of what's considered appropriate for television have forced the writers to constantly adapt their approach. Let's talk about the show's international reception, which varies wildly from country to country. In some nations, entire episodes have been banned for content that American audiences barely notice. Certain characters have been completely removed from international versions, while other episodes have been so heavily edited that they're barely recognizable. The challenge of creating content that works across different cultural contexts while maintaining the show's irreverent spirit has led to some creative solutions and some spectacular failures. The merchandise empire surrounding Family Guy is absolutely massive, but some of the products that have been created are genuinely bizarre. There have been Family Guy energy drinks, pet accessories, and even home security systems. The strangest might be the Family Guy branded medical supplies, which seems like an odd choice given the show's generally unhealthy lifestyle choices and medical mishaps. The fact that someone thought a thermometer featuring Peter Griffin was a marketable idea says something about our society that I'm not sure I want to examine too closely. Speaking of merchandise, the show's impact on internet culture cannot be overstated. Family Guy clips and memes have become a fundamental part of online humor, often taken completely out of context and used in ways the original creators never intended. Some jokes that weren't particularly funny in their original episodes have become comedy gold when isolated and shared online. The show has essentially become a meme generator, producing content that takes on a life of its own in the digital world. The guest star roster for Family Guy reads like a who's who of entertainment industry legends. What's remarkable is how many A-list celebrities have been willing to appear on a show that regularly mocks celebrity culture and Hollywood excess. Some guests have even allowed the show to create entire episodes built around making fun of their public personas. The fact that these stars are willing to be the butt of the joke shows either remarkable good humor or excellent agents who understand the value of staying relevant. But let's get back to the truly weird stuff. Did you know that the show has featured several episodes that were never supposed to air? These lost episodes contain content so strange or controversial that network executives decided they crossed lines that shouldn't be crossed. Some of these episodes have leaked online over the years, while others remain locked away in the Fox vault, possibly never to see the light of day. The existence of this hidden Family Guy content has spawned entire online communities dedicated to tracking down and sharing these forbidden episodes. The show's approach to historical events is particularly interesting. Family Guy has tackled everything from the Kennedy assassination to 9/11, often in ways that push the boundaries of good taste. What's fascinating is how the show uses humor to comment on serious subjects, while simultaneously acknowledging that some things probably shouldn't be joked about. This creates a strange tension, where the show is both deeply irreverent and oddly respectful at the same time. The technical aspects of producing Family Guy have evolved dramatically over the show's run. Early episodes were animated using traditional cell animation techniques, while later seasons rely heavily on computer-generated imagery. This transition has allowed for more complex visual effects and smoother animation, but it's also changed the fundamental look and feel of the show in subtle ways that longtime fans notice immediately. One of the most bizarre aspects of Family Guy lore involves the show's relationship with its own cancellation. The series was actually canceled twice by Fox, only to be brought back due to popular demand and strong DVD sales. This cancellation and resurrection cycle has become part of the show's mythology, with episodes regularly making jokes about their own temporary death. Few television series have turned their own mortality into a running gag quite so effectively. The scientific accuracy, or complete lack thereof, in Family Guy episodes could provide material for an entire physics course on what not to do. The show regularly features characters surviving impacts that would kill normal humans, objects behaving in ways that violate basic laws of physics, and medical situations that would be impossible in reality. While this is obviously intentional comedy, the sheer volume of scientific impossibilities in each episode is actually quite impressive from a creative standpoint. As you're drifting off to sleep tonight, consider this final thought. Family Guy has been on the air for so long that there are now adults who have never lived in a world without the Griffin family. For an entire generation, the bizarre logic of Family Guy humor has been a constant background presence in their lives. The show has shaped comedy sensibilities, influenced internet culture, and created a shared cultural language that spans multiple generations. The random facts we've explored tonight barely scratch the surface of the Family Guy universe. Behind every episode lies a web of creative decisions, production challenges, and cultural commentary that reveals far more depth than the show's crude humor might suggest. Whether you love it or hate it, Family Guy has undeniably left an indelible mark on television history and popular culture. So as you close your eyes and let sleep take over, remember that somewhere in the world, animators are working on the next batch of Family Guy episodes, creating new random facts that will someday keep future generations awake at night, wondering how on earth such a bizarre and wonderful show ever came to exist. Sweet dreams, and may your subconscious be filled with the chaotic energy of the Griffin family and their endlessly entertaining dysfunction.